Doing Merry Christmas. All right, what I'd like to do is call the December 2nd, 2019 regular meeting of the Destin City Council to order. We don't have a pastor here tonight, so Skip, if you'd like to lead us in the pledge. Up first, agenda approval. Is there any changes anyone has? Mr. Mitchell.
I'd like to consider pulling 4A until we have a full city council seated.
That's full A,
4A.
4A.
Do you mean 3A?
You may be looking at an old agenda. They reordered stuff.
You're
You're talking about the two-lane roadway item?
Yeah, engineering update 2-lane roadway is what Mr. Mitchell made a motion to pull. Do you have something to say to
I
that?
was just going to say that's 3A and on my agenda pack.
Okay, it was 4A on mine.
Okay, let's just read the name of it so that the number isn't confusing, that's all.
Okay, under City Manager's Report, 4A, engineering update, dash 2-lane roadway. Mr. Mitchell's made a motion to pull that off the agenda, and I had a second by Ms. Ramswell. If there's any, no further discussion, let's take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. We'll take that issue up when Mr. Destin can attend, or we have a full council. Is there any other items that anyone would like to have changed? Seeing none, I'd like to, we'll move to...
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none? Unanimous, so moved. Item 1A, approval of the minutes of the November 7th, 2019 City Council Strategic Visioning Session.
Motion to approve?
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about that? Seeing none? Votes unanimous, so moved. Under 2A, we have a presentation by Public Works and Safety Committee Chairman, the surtax expenditure request.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, City Manager. Okay, Public Works and Safety, obviously, we're also part of the nice half-cent tax which you kindly gave to us to do some work with. So we looked at this deeply, and the thing we came up with was sidewalks. Why did we come up with sidewalks? There are 485 areas of sidewalks in the city of Destin that need repairing, and some of them need repairing now. A lot of this work is going to be shaving the sidewalks. There are areas where vehicles are parked on the sidewalk. It's caused the concrete to crack. Weather has also been a problem. Tree roots have been another one. But roughly around 75 miles of sidewalk in the city of Destin that need repairing. On your agendas, we actually give you a list of what the cost is going to be, and it's roughly around a total of $400,000 to fix everything. Now, this is not an overnight thing. This is going to take at least 18 months to 2 years to fix. It's not just, it's fixed. It's going to take a while. What we were looking at is looking at the worst areas first. Those should be repaired, get those done, and then the contractor, whoever's going to do this, will then start roughly east and move west, or west and move east, repairing the remainder of the sidewalks. I actually did some due diligence. I went out and I actually called the emergency rooms, etc., asking about accidents on the sidewalks. And this year alone, there were 74. accidents, of people tripping. Could the city be sued over this? Absolutely they could. But nobody has. So that's one up for us right now. But saying that, that could change. So what we're asking for is for the council to agree to approve the $400,000, so early next year, as soon as we can, is start repairing the sidewalks in the city. Any questions?
Any questions?
Where are you going to get the money from?
Say again?
Where was you going to get the money from?
I can't hear you, I'm deaf in this ear.
Where are you going to get the money from?
The half-cent tax money that's been given to the city. That's where the money is going to come out of, we hope.
Okay, thank you.
So is that the official recommendation from
That's our
the
official
committee?
recommendation right now. There are some other things we actually looked at, but this was the number one. We looked at the fact is our roads are being done. 98's going to look wonderful once it's finished, but we forgot about the sidewalks. We need to repair the sidewalks, get those up to date and fixed. I will let you know, we also looked at was the crosswalks around the schools. That was another one of ours, is we feel they're not lighted enough. There should be signs that flash telling people to slow down because people still speed. But the sidewalks came out on top for right now, to repairs.
Did you look at undergrounding utilities or public beach purchase?
Say again?
Did you look at underground utilities or purchasing public
Yeah,
beach
if
access?
they go down 98, obviously they're going to have to, whatever they're going to do, but we haven't put that in there. This is just repairs. This is not new sidewalks. This is not putting those nice little ramps in for the handicap and stuff like that. That's not including this. The nice yellow plastic strips that they put across the on the sidewalks, that's not including this. This is just repairs that the city requires to be fixed.
Bragg, serve my memory, have we designated any of those monies from the half cents? Infrastructure, sales tax?
Yeah, you've designated about $650,000 of our funds so far in the 2020 budget, but there will be certainly the $400,000 that he's requesting would be available for that also.
Mr. Overdare.
Okay, so we've got how much in the budget for fixing sidewalks already?
This is just projects that are, these are just projects that have been funded with the new half-cent sales tax. This is not the sidewalk repairs.
Weren't we supposed?
So we've not budgeted any money this year to repair sidewalks?
Oh, yes, sure, yes, we have.
How much?
I believe it's like about $80,000. I don't know right off the top of my head. I believe that's the number, but I can get that number.
You're right, it's around 85,000.
Okay, so you're adding an additional
Yes,
390, which
Yes.
and this is for 2 years, because you said it's 18 months. So if we do 80,000 this year and we would do it on 80,000 next year, that would be 160,000 plus 390?
to get this done.
The reason I asked Bragg this question is I was certain that, before he answered it, that we hadn't earmarked all our infrastructure half-cent sales tax on projects. And I think that's what their committee's done, is hoping that we'll use some of that additional funding, because we should have over 400,000 available, because we were looking at close to $1 million from the surtax, correct, Bragg?
That's correct.
So we would still, we'd be in that ballpark.
There's
We'd be
sufficient-
under budget.
Yeah, there's sufficient funding, and if the project's going to take approximately 18 to 24 months, then you're really looking at the funding over a 2-year time period, which would be around $2+ million collected. And so the 400,000 would be a small proportion of that.
Well, and I understand that, but just like Chadam's saying, I mean, weren't we kind of intending to use some of that money to buy beach access and to underground utilities?
Yeah, I thought we were going to have a discussion on how this money was to be spent before, that's already been budgeted, the first year of half-cent sales tax.
Just a portion of it, just a
Okay,
portion.
because I thought we were going to have a discussion on how to spend this money.
I guess we are right now. At least on this, with
Not
their
an
presentation.
agenda discussion with formal votes, but I mean, I just think with the windfall of money that's coming to this city from the half-cent sales tax, look at the city's biggest problem. Personally, I think it's a lack of beach access. I would like to hear what my colleagues say, but, you know, we've got $900,000 coming in for 10 years. You bond that out to $9 million, and you could make a sizable impact on our public beach problem. Or undergrounding utilities, which are personally my two biggest projects that I think would make the biggest difference in Destin. And no, you know, and I agree sidewalks are necessary too, but if you're going to pit me between sidewalk repairs or our lack of public beach, lack of public beach is our biggest existential threat to this community. And so.
Ms. Ramswell?
Thanks. So I have a question. We tasked the Public Works and Safety Committee with coming up with ideas and the best way to utilize the money coming in. So we asked for them to look and consider ideas and then bring back their recommendation. So this is their recommendation to us. Now, clearly, I agree with our need for beach and all that, but I thought we had looked at some other lines of funding for the beach property.
I don't think we could have enough funding for our beach problem. That's only getting worse.
Right, okay. Well, all right.
And I would just like, and this is not the time for the discussion because it's not agended, but I would like the entire council to have an honest discussion. And really, we were waiting for y'all's recommendations, which, all due respect, I happen to disagree with the way this money should be spent with the recommendation of the Public Safety Committee. And I think the entire council, at some point, I would like to see a vote for how we're going to spend this money in the next, at
Well,
least.
maybe a prioritized list would be appropriate on the agenda, and then we have that candid discussion at that time. The chairman here is just reporting their recommendations.
I mean, I could look at it this way. We could adjust this to the fact is we could look at the worst part of sidewalks and at least get those fixed, and maybe delay some of the smaller work. But there are some areas that really do need, I mean, the sidewalk's sticking up this far, and it needs to be done. It needs to be fixed. So we could adjust this if you wish. We can look at the worst of the worst for the sidewalks and then make a second recommendations to you guys. We've looked at this and what the cost will be. But this is what we, as I say, we came up with all the repairs for the sidewalks itself.
Mr. Marlar, would you like to weigh in?
Yes. Tony has a lot of points. The reason I say this is that from 96 to 2000, I served on the Public Works Public Safety Committee, and also when I left the council in 2008, I served another 4 years on that committee. In that time, I can tell you, and I was also the chairman from 96 to, well, part of the 96 to 2000. We as a committee had addressed sidewalks over and over and over, and we never had the money to get anything really done except a tiny bit of patchwork, a few new pieces of sidewalk, and that was as far as it went. Public Works, Public Safety has done a tremendous job of trying to tell us tonight one of the major issues. Yes, Chatham, I agree with you. We need more beach access. And I thought that's where
Do you think that our lack of public beach access is a bigger problem than broken sidewalks?
Well, I don't think, I thought, and my understanding is that I thought that when we start hopefully getting the rest of the BP money, that was going to be part of what we used to get some more beach property. We have two issues. We need beach property, and we also have a public safety obligation to our public to make sure that we don't have any lawsuits by making sure that our sidewalks are as safe as possibility, and we're a multimodal town. So we need to at least acknowledge that, yeah, we have two issues that we need to solve, and I mean, I agree that the money has got to come from somewhere, but I think there's money available to do both. You know, and I really applaud the Public Safety, Public Works Committee for bringing this to bringing this up, because it's come up more and more every year. But yes, we do need both, and I think we can figure out a way to do that if we put our, get down to the brass tacks, as they used to say. So, but I do agree that we need to have a separate meeting on just this alone, and do as Chatham said, to each of us weigh in on what we feel. But thank you, Tony. I really appreciate you bringing this forward.
Thank you, Tony. And this is a presentation for their request. It doesn't require us to act on it tonight. Per Mr. Morgan's recommendations, he would like to have a more thorough discussion, a prioritized subject matter of some of the things that are important to us. So, Tony, thank you very much for your presentation. And I think what we'll do, I know it's another meeting, but this sounds like a workshop type of issue, because we have more than just sidewalks. I'm sure that Tony would like to weigh in a workshop situation with some other requests that we could use to look at and prioritize outside of our beach stuff. So I'll work with the city manager and we'll come up with some dates post-Christmas to put together a workshop and get something done along these lines. Maybe we can find some compromise and set aside a smaller amount of money to, like Tony said, to at least address some of the most severe sidewalk issues.
When do we expect the first revenues to come in?
We've actually been receiving revenue since February of this year.
So we got money in the pot.
So how much is in the pot?
We've received just a little more than $900,000 as of through the October distribution.
Great, thanks.
Okay, all right, you get that? We'll put out a feeler for a workshop date. And in the meantime, council members, maybe you might want to start your own priority list to be part of that workshop agenda, along with these recommendations from our committee. Does that sound good with everyone? All right, we're going to move right on to 2B then, a presentation by Mr. Joseph Raines, Vice President, General Manager, Lamar Advertising. Sir?
How's that? Is that better? Thank you so much for having us here tonight, and we're going to, we know you got a long agenda, and we're going to try to be brief, but we're going to make a simple presentation. Got an idea that we might work together on a project, and it goes like this. Lamar owns and operates 10 billboard structures in the city limits. We would offer to take down 4 of those billboard structures, therefore reducing the overall number of boards by 40%, in exchange for 4 permits to replace standard billboard faces on the 6 remaining billboard structures with digital faces. We own and operate 1 digital face now. Another company, I think, owns and operates 2 billboard faces that are digital in the city at this point. So here are some of the advantages. For us, it's a simple financial move. As we've talked, we are a public company and would like to continue to operate at a profit. I think y'all would all understand that. So yes, there will be potentially more income by us restructuring and going with this type proposal, no question. The other is the benefit, we think, to the city. We now are closely working with Florida Department of Law Enforcement. We do Amber Alerts. We have them on the street within 30 minutes of the call. We do the flags, recognition system. We do directions during hurricanes and so forth and so on. A lot of public service stuff, as well as promoting local events, nonprofits, and so forth. So I know you might have some questions. This is very basic. What we would ask for the for your support tonight is a simple direction to the staff to work with us and the attorneys and so forth, everybody involved, and see if we can work out an agreement that would be acceptable to both parties and return and make the final presentation.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your phone call earlier today, and I'd like
Yes,
to
sir.
follow up on that. For everybody's benefit, I had asked you to try to get a couple of pieces of information. I don't know if you have that available or not, but the first thing was the standpoint of, from a revenue thing, obviously you just said you're all in the business to make money, and I appreciate that. But what's the difference between your digital sign and your static sign in revenue for you? I've done some limited research because we just got
Okay.
this, but I'm curious
Well,
to know if you have that information.
Here's, I do appreciate that, and I try to get some numbers together. So I'm not a CPA, so I'm just going to give you some rough working numbers that we have been working with, overall numbers to look at taking all 4 down and putting up 4 digital faces. That's sort of a bottom line approach. Would that be okay with you? Okay. It works sort of like this. If we take down the 4 structures that are in the Harbor CRA, and we take down the 4 faces that will be replaced by the digital units, the total revenue loss per month would be $29,000. We then would come back and replace the 4 faces outside the CRA, and we figure that with 8, here's how it goes. For 8 slots at $1,950 per slot at 75% occupancy, that's the way we figure our normal income and return on investment for these faces. We should, now it'll take 3 to 5 years for this to fill out. It takes a little time for these boards to sell out. But with that in mind, we should go to $46,800 for a net increase of about $1,779, the way I figure it. Is that?
I appreciate that. I have no idea. That's why I was asking. I did
Okay.
some limited research.
All right.
In other places, in other communities, the return on investment is much higher. Okay, so that's that. The other thing is I asked you from a standpoint of ratio. In other areas in the Panhandle, what ratio have you done? In this case, the 4 for 10 type thing. Have you done similar ratios?
Oh, numbers of boards? Yes, sir. I'm going to do this from memory. Fort Walton Beach, I think we took down, we had all older structures there. We didn't have any Tri-Visions, of course, didn't have any digitals at the time. We took down, from memory, I believe 14 structures, and we came back with 3 structures double-faced digital, which gave us 6 digital operative faces. The city we granted the city, and by agreement, they got an incoming face on each of the 3 boards for use with whatever they wanted. And they do their own city promotions. And so that was that one. We have a similar deal with the city of Niceville. It was a little bit different. They were concerned with limiting the growth of future billboards. So what we did up there was we capped all the existing structures at 13, which we can leave the 13 in place, we can move them around and so forth, but we agreed that we would not apply for any additional structures. Therefore, we came back as part of the deal, then they granted unlimited digital permits as we need them. we have 2 digital faces out of the 13 in Niceville. Again, the city operates one spot on each of those boards for city purposes. There are 8 advertisers in a loop. In the loop in statewide normally is 6 seconds per advertiser. In Destin, by ordinance, is established at 10 seconds, just the way it is. How we got our first board here, this was after Hurricanes Opal and Aaron, as part of the agreement with the city that if we took down a board in the CRA, which we did, that they would grant a permit, and that's how we got our single board. At the time, there were no restrictions against TriVisions, which is the mechanical changing device, or digital, either one. Since then, that has changed, so they're no longer allowed, which, of course, we would like to continue to grow in our digital field. We think it brings us to the 21st century. We think it was the future. Now it's simply the present, but we see all the digital on-site signs all over town, so we know they're allowed. We see 2 other billboards, know they were allowed, so we're simply here to see if we can work out an arrangement where we might get a few more as well.
Mr. Overdeer? Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, do you have any questions? Go ahead.
I appreciate your information. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Overdeer?
Okay, my only take on this is, we have spent several years, and we're going to spend several more years, and we're going to spend millions of dollars to underground utilities. And one of the reasons, and I know it's not the main reason, but one of the reasons why we're undergrounding utilities is because of the aesthetics. Because when you drive down a highway, down 98 or any other street where they have utilities, it just isn't very appealing to the eye. And I've seen all kinds of before and after photos from other towns and other municipalities that have done this, and it's a dramatic difference. And I think it's well worth our time and effort to do that. But now we're sitting here looking at billboards, and I will tell you that billboards, in my mind, are virtually the same thing. You drive down a highway, and that's what you see. You see a bunch of billboards. So we're trying to get rid of the power lines, but yet we're going to continue to have billboards, and I'm just not in favor of this. What I would be in favor of is, if you want to do this, if you got 10 billboards now, I would say take down 10 of them, put 2 digital ones up, and call it a day. And that, anything other than that, I think I wouldn't be in favor of.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. It's funny this is coming up tonight because I was mentioned about a month ago needing to look at our sign ordinance and change it, tweak it, tighten it up, whatever you want to call it. Because I noticed yesterday one of our signs, or one of the businesses has a new sign. And it's probably 30 feet in the air. It's huge, and and we really need to get it all back down. You know, like we're down here at Home Depot, where everything's eye level and smaller. And then as I was riding down the road and saw that sign, then the next thing I thought was, how are we going to get rid of the billboards? So it's really going to be tough for me to support it unless there's some big changes on the billboards itself. That's all I have, Mayor.
Mr. Marlar?
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully you can give me this part of the answer. The digital versus the mechanical. You're using the mechanical now, which changes different ones.
Right.
Obviously, the digital is a little bit better as far as if you have a problem. Except I do know that the little panels are very expensive. You know, that's a question. That's why I'm asking versus digital versus the mechanical. Is the mechanical more expensive than the digital would be?
Actually, it's less. A typical you're referring to a TriVision unit. There are 3 advertisers on it. Those run us install $25,000 to $30,000. A digital unit, same size, will run about $130,000. So there's quite a difference in the two. But the advantage to us is not only the flexibility of being able to change the advertisers, but we go from 3 advertisers to 8.
Okay.
So that's the simple math.
All right, next question I have has to do with the intensity of the digital versus, versus what you have. You have the spotlights on the other signs.
Mm-hmm.
The intensity, because I've noticed, especially going down around Matthew Boulevard, where I think y'all have got one somewhere in that vicinity, it's very bright. I'm worried about the traffic situation.
I can answer that.
Yes.
They are exactly the same as the ones with the lights on them, computer controlled.
And the final thing is, you kind of touched on it. The way our ordinance reads, if you do remove the ones first off, if you do remove the ones in the Harbor District, you won't be able to put them back.
Oh, that's for certain.
And then the other question, the final question I have is, why did you decide that those 4 needed to go? Did they not produce anything for you, or, because you seem to be going east, staying going east, and, nothing.
No,
nothing in the Harbor
actually,
District.
that was y'all's idea.
Okay.
It goes back a few years.
The Harbor Board recommended that.
Okay.
Well, originally, yes.
Okay.
Mhm. So we thought we would do something to work that side, as well as try to expand our income on the other side.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything I've heard up here tonight, so I don't know if we need a motion, but I'd like to have our land use attorney research this a little more. And then, and I can make a motion if you'd like, kind of what other municipalities have done in these scenarios, and then try to work out a deal that's a bit more favorable for the city in terms of the ratio.
Okay?
I'll get with Ms. Ramswell for round 2 in just a second. The only comments I have is, I'm pretty sure our main focus on undergrounding 98 and changing the aesthetics is going to pretty much start in the Harbor District. And so removing those 4 billboards in the Harbor District fits right into that plan. There are places where the billboards are not so unacceptable, like around the Commons or your shopping districts. And if, in the case that they've done with these other cities, if we could have a little time of our own advertising or public service announcements or flag warnings or stuff like that in our main thoroughfare where people are coming and going, I could see a benefit there. But also in the interest of fairness, a 40% change may not be the most benefit to the city, and I think that's what you were getting at, is maybe we talk about a different ratio on how many they take down and how many they leave up. So I think, Chatham, your recommendation to have Kim look at all our ordinances and stuff like that would be key, and not that way we don't end up shooting Lamar Advertising down right here at the podium. So, Ms. Ramswell, with that being said, go ahead.
Just a question. You said of the remaining 6 that you would leave here, 4 of those would be digital. Do you know which 4 you had in mind, or just any of the 6?
We've got that roughed out, and I tell you why I'm not offering a definitive answer is because of the state of the roads. So we don't know exactly what the sight lines are going to be, but I would be more than happy to tell you what we think the 4 would be. We think they would be number 10, number 5, number 6, and I have to get out my glasses, I think number 8. That would be on your map, 10, 5, 6, and 8.
And then my last question is, how many digital do we currently have?
In the city, 3.
Thank.
All right.
We have 1 and another company has 2. We have 1, another company has 2.
Ah, okay, so that's an interesting point then.
Yeah, we're only addressing
So you
Lamar.
have- So we have more than 10 billboards total, or 14, 10. We have more than 10 billboards total because those are just your billboards. There's another
Yes,
company that has additional
I'm sorry, I
ones
should have
here.
mentioned that. There are, I believe, 3 other companies that operate billboards in the city. I don't have their specifics and count, but we operate 10.
Good to know. I did not realize that there were other companies that had
Yes.
billboards here. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Before you step down, Mr. Braden, I have you on the list.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, the gentleman said he's here tonight looking for direction from the council. And it's on the agenda, so we'll just see where it stands tonight. We'll go ahead and make a motion to leave our signed ordinance as is.
I have a motion.
I'll second that if that's,
Hey, we have a motion and I have a second. And any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Do
Skip.
you need to be in the motion, or is direction fine?
Direction is fine with me.
Okay, so this, if we keep the current ordinance as it is, if we don't change it, then they're not going to be able to do what they want to do at all. Okay, I just want to, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and the 4 signs in the Harbor District remain under the existing ordinance.
So just for clarity, could you clarify if your motion includes wanting me to do any of the research that Chatham suggested, or are you just saying take no action, essentially?
I tell you what, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Is that okay with a second? All right. So take no action right at the moment is what I'm getting. We don't need a motion to take no action. We just
Well, we're
don't take
going with
any.
Chatham's recommendation.
And you got it? You have a motion? Just direction. All right. So we're just going to leave it at that. We
Okay,
gave her the
would you-
direction?
Would you mind?
So the direction
Ms.
is for me to do the research, and then I understand that we will talk with them about potentially negotiating a better deal and making that ratio more favorable to the city, as well as talking about potentially a city sign face.
Okay.
With.
Could I clarify?
With a little attention to the ratio numbers as well.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, got it. Just a clarification, we're not here to ask you to change the sign ordinance. Did I leave that out? I guess I did. So I apologize.
We understand.
Right.
We're going to give them a little more time to communicate, do a little research, and then everybody will be back up here, and we will take some action on the next time. All right? Everybody
That's
good
correct.
with
And
that?
also, just for the record, staff isn't going to make any final decisions. It will come back to council.
All right, that's correct. Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you all
All right.
very much.
At this time, under item 3, public comments on the agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matters not on the agenda. All agenda items other than those under number 5. And I have a series of cards, and so I will call these, because we don't have, I don't think any of these, our public hearings are all under 5, and I don't have any under that. So we'll do the speaker cards first, and then after we go through the speaker cards, I'll look out in the audience, and if anybody would like to at that time be acknowledged by the chair, I'll call you up, and you can have an opportunity to speak. And I want to remind everyone that at the very end of the meeting, there'll be another opportunity for the people to come forward and make any comments on the events that have transpired here tonight. So you have 2 times to weigh, actually 3 times to weigh in on public at the podium. Right now, during the public hearing process under items 5, and then again at the very end of the meeting. So first up, Stephen Tatum. Again, remind you, just state your name and your address.
Stephen Tatum, Matthews and Jones, 4475 Legendary Drive, Destin. Here tonight on behalf of several clients who are short-term rental owners. This is a little premature in some sense, but item 4I that Mr. Johnson's going to speak with you guys about in just a little while is the short-term rental task force's suggested changes to the ordinance. They're bringing it to you, the staff is, to ask for a recommendation on what changes you would like to have. And we just have one issue with this. One of the requested changes is that every short-term rental owner provide a parking pass for every car that's going to be parked on their property. It's not really workable in a lot of senses, but for one thing, it's not enforceable by the city. Code enforcement can't enter the property to actually look to see if there's passes hanging from windows or decals on the cars. So they could only enforce it from looking from the sidewalk or the right-of-way into the driveway and trying to figure out which cars do and don't have decals in them. But beyond that, any local government regulation has to be rationally related to a legitimate state function or purpose. And in this case, I don't know what that is. We already have the amount of cars that can be parked on each lot. You know, if they're approved for 8, then they can have 8. Code enforcement can walk out there and see there's 9 cars, okay, citation or notice of violation, depending on where the car's parked. The decals just don't seem to serve any purpose at all besides just adding another layer of paperwork for everyone. So that's our biggest problem. I've got several clients who they've been through the last round of changes, the occupancy stuff. They've done their Burt Harris claims. They've kind of been taking this sitting back, and they're tired of sitting back. And this one just was kind of over the top for them. So it's preemptive, I know. It's a little too early to be talking about this since there's not even an ordinance back, but I just wanted you guys to know, because I know your packet was 690-something pages today, so you may not have seen these 40 pages from short-term rental. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Ken Wampler.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Ken Wampler, 310 Laripe Loop. I'm here too to talk about the short-term vacation rental task force, which I was on, and 3 other committee members are here with me today. And just from my perspective, I want to frame kind of the efforts that we put forth from my perspective. And that is, we spent a lot of time and energy talking about communication and education. 4 years ago, we first talked about this topic, and we talked about 3 main issues that are facing the city as it relates to code enforcement. Those are the same today as they were 4 years ago: parking, noise, and trash. And so what we spent a lot of time on was making recommendations for the acknowledgement and the rules, if you will, of short-term vacation rental. And we focused our energy on trash cans. Right now, the ordinance says that the trash must be placed properly in the trash can, can't be out before noon or the day before, must be pulled back by 5 p.m., you know, whatever that is. But what was occurring was people putting trash bags out and a litany of other trash cans. So through the due diligence, it was discovered that it's recommended that you have 1 trash can for every 6 people that are staying in the house, and we're talking about the 96-gallon trash can, plus the recycling bin. So you actually end up with 2 if you only have 6 people staying in your house. So that's one of the recommendations that we're bringing forward today, is that, you know, we should educate and communicate to the owners and the guests that you should have the proper number of trash cans to eliminate the need for excess trash along the street. The second thing was relative to parking. As the previous speaker talked about, the discussion was, well, the theory was that there were a number of guests that were coming that didn't know they were limited on the number of cars that they could bring. And one of the committee members, who is not here today, said that, what if I tell my guests you can bring 6 vehicles and they bring 6 large SUVs? Clearly, that's going to take up a lot more space than 6 smart cars. So we struggled with that whole concept. But the idea was, if the guests are told while they're making the reservation, when they arrive, how many vehicles they're allowed to have, then that could help soften that blow. During that discussion, I said to Joey, are you guys going to inspect for parking passes? And he said, practically no, because as far as we're concerned, if there's a parking violation, it's either yes or no. It doesn't matter if you have a pass. It doesn't matter if you have a decal. So it's another way to educate and communicate to the end user, i.e. the guest that's staying in the residence, how many vehicles they can have. But the reality, it doesn't matter as long as they're within the parking restrictions, the driveways and the garage. It doesn't matter how many vehicles they bring. So those two things are more recommendations that should go in the acknowledgement and therefore don't require an actual change of the ordinance. The other two, and I'll make this fast, the other two things that came up were relative to the renewal date of the short-term vacation rental registration form. We're recommending that that becomes by March 1st of each year or February 28th. And then the last thing was, since parking continues to be an issue, I'm trying to talk real fast, it's supposed to be an issue, then maybe what we should do is give the code enforcement some teeth. And I said this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we need to give code enforcement some teeth. If the habitual offenders don't have any penalty for not following the code, then what are we doing this all for to begin with? Because at the end of the day, it's the same old issues. So it was me that made the recommendation, and the rest of the committee agreed, that the parking violation should be the highest amount allowed by Florida statute. And so that way, if someone is parking where they shouldn't be, and again, that's the car's owner. It's the owner of the car that has the violation that pays the fine. The owner of the home is going to get a notification, and that will be a violation of the short-term vacation rental agreement. But at the end of the day, if my car is parked in the right of way, I should be getting penalized. Now, do we want our guests to be penalized? Absolutely no way. But it comes back to communicate, educate. If we communicate and educate, you all as a city council don't need to make any changes to the ordinance as it relates to parking noise and parking noise and trash. What we need to do is we need to tighten up and give code enforcement, the tools to make sure that habitual offenders get the message loud and clear. Because personally, from a vacation rental management standpoint, I'm tired, just like the other homeowners are tired of getting these new things that we have to do simply because Joe Blow doesn't follow the rules. If Chatham's my son and he speeds all the time and I punish his brother, that doesn't satisfy the problem. Sorry, Chatham. But at the end of the day, let's address the issue. And I've said that for 4 years, but it's worth reiterating. The last thing I'll say is, it came up, condos, and I will just tell for the group, we had a probably 5 or 10 minute conversation about why don't condos need to register. The condos pay association fees, which takes care of what? Parking, noise, and trash. So they already have additional fees that the condo owners are paying for those issues. And again, you'd have to check with Joey. 90% of the calls he's getting have nothing to do with condos. And when he gets calls from condos, it's his words, not mine. It's usually the condo manager that's trying to understand what the city code's doing. Thank you.
Ken, I have a question for you. As you said, and if I had to speak for the council, I'd say we're pretty much sick of dealing with short-term rentals, topics. As y'all are. I mean, I know they're looking at the agendas every time to see what's coming up with short-term rentals. And like you said, the trash, the noise, and the parking, if it wasn't for those, we really wouldn't have any issues. So we've been dealing with it, like you said, for the last 2, 3, 4 years. And it's getting to the point where the council just, wants to do something to just shut it down altogether, whatever we can do. So was there any other recommendations from the board or from the committee that we could do, or you guys can do, or other than, like you said, I've been saying all along, when you get the maximum fine and put some teeth in and make it stick and get in their wallet, is the only way they're going to change. If not, I mean, it's just human nature. You're not going to change as long as you're getting away with it. So, I mean, what can we do to nip this in the bud so that we're not dealing with it anymore and short-term rental people aren't dealing with it anymore?
There's two things on that, Councilman Braden, and I hate to bring it up, but this business tax receipt thing I've brought up 15,000 times, that in the short-term vacation rental registration process, that's the way to address the habitual offenders. If they don't want to play by the rules, you can prohibit them from playing in the sandbox. That would be my recommendation, and I'm not speaking for the committee, but if you've got some teeth, you've got them in those two areas. And right now, the business tax receipt committee that we worked 9 months on has gone nowhere, and that's a missing link.
So it's a business tax receipt, and you're saying the ordinance is, as far as the maximum that the state will allow?
Under the parking violation, which is obviously a different ordinance than the short-term vacation rental.
I thought we maxed that out already as far as the penalty. So we need to max that out.
Do you write parking tickets, Joey?
Yes, sir. Your parking citations are written for $30. It's in the Code of Ordinances, and that's what they're talking about going up to the state statute, max state statute.
Which
You know,
is how much?
Right now, I mean, we paid $30. That's what ours is, and then my recommendation is $100. $100. After looking at other areas, it's 80, 75, 150.
What's the maximum?
The maximum, I don't know the Florida state statute on the maximum, sir.
Can you find that out, please, and bring that back to the next council?
And our recommendation was, don't put a dollar amount, put it in maximum allowed by Florida statute. And then that way, you can give Joey the authority. If you do it one time, it's this, 2 times it's that, 4 times it's this, whatever it is. Right now, you're limited to $30 or whatever it is.
Yes, sir, $30.
That's
Yeah,
great. Kim, can you do that, please?
Yeah, and the only issue about the BTR side of it, Ken, is I saw her lad used to turn and roll
She
her
knew I was
eyes.
going to say
He
something.
he knows how
He
I feel
knows.
about that.
It just, that's a rabbit hole. I mean, our legal bills right now are enough. I don't think, bless you and your STR, but that's a rabbit hole we don't want to jump down at this
But
particular
remember, there
time.
was 2 components. One was updating the ordinance, the other was the fee schedule. I think you can still update the ordinance, sir.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Steve.
One of the other recommendations, I'd just like to get your opinion on this, the reference about phoning the day before for trash.
A lot of professional management companies do that, and they've got the Glad to Have You app for vacation rental management companies, and they have emails. These guests communicate via email, and, you know, and I can't speak for everybody, but, you know, typically our guests will put the trash out, and we hire someone to go back and make sure the trash cans are put away on on Monday night, tonight, don't forget to put trash out, on Monday night and on Thursday night. And I will tell you, the waste management guy came to one of our committee meetings and said that there's 50% less trash cans put to the curb on Friday morning than there is on Tuesday morning. The other part of that equation, if I'm here for a week, I may not want to throw all my food away until I go, so there's an increase on Saturday, which is why a lot of us use a separate service on Saturday, and Waste Management said they would be agreeable to altering their valet service on Saturday to start at noon. Right now, it starts Saturday morning at 6:30, and Councilman Menchel, I don't know when you went on vacation last, but if you left on Saturday, did you have all your trash out at 6 in the morning?
Understand. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir. That's a long 3 minutes. That's all right. We needed to hear it. I think your message was loud and clear. Up next, Rick Scally.
Hello there. My name is Rick Scally. My property address is 3675 Scenic Highway 98. I actually served on the original short-term rental task force, and I think we did a pretty good job. I've noticed a significant difference on Scenic Highway 98 and a lot of the side streets. I did review the recommendations to the City Council from the second and not as good of a short-term committee as the first one. And I've got 3 issues that I want to address. First one is regarding calling guests before trash pickup. Well, we don't call them, we text them. In fact, we normally, as a routine, send out a text on the Thursday morning prior to the Friday trash pickup. Calling, requiring us to call guests, I think is silly. How do you verify that? The responsible property managers already do that. As Mr. Wampler already said, that's what we do for responsible. I think it's silly to even have that in an ordinance. The second one is the number of trash cans. Right now I notice that the recommendation is 1 trash can per 6 guests. I think that's too low. I think it should be 8. And the reason I say that is that a 3-bedroom house sleeps approximately 8 guests. 6 of them in beds, and then we have a sleeper sofa. Majority of the time, it's just in the beds. But if we have to have another trash can, because it's 2 over the original limit, I got 2 extra trash cans in all my 3-bedroom houses, which I don't think is necessary. Higher than that, yes, but I think 8 should be that number, so you don't have a double the number of trash cans. And one of the issues that you run into is that when trash cans are put out, if you double the number of trash cans, you got double the number of trash cans on the street on trash pickup. I think 1 per 8 would accommodate most of the 3-bedroom houses, which is majority of what I have is 3-bedroom houses. I've been in this business for 18 years, and we haven't had an issue with our 3-bedroom houses with 1 can per house. And the third thing is regarding, maybe it's not under the recommendation, but the increase in the registration fees. It went from nothing to $25 to $50 to $200, and now it's being increased to $500, which is a 150% increase. I don't know where that number came from. I don't know who generated a cost or a fee of $500 per registrant. What numbers did they come up with? Where did they get those numbers? I certainly hope it wasn't based on just last year when they implemented a lot of the new recommendations on the original short-term rental committee. Maybe 500 is a good number, but I think we're premature on it. I think we got to go at least 1 more year on the $200, and then if staff thinks that a $500 or an increase above the $200 is warranted, then I think they should put that in there. But to arbitrarily put in a $150 increase in 1 year, just the 4 houses that I own, that's going from $800 to $2,000. Now maybe that doesn't seem a lot of money to some of you folks, but for me and my wife, that's a lot of money. And with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Is there any questions on anything I said?
Yep.
Well, he got a lot more time. No, it's okay.
Well, they burn up all their questions on one guy, Rick, sorry. All right, up next, Jim Green. And Jim, you want to just wait and give your comments during Mr. Morgan's portion when we're addressing it?
He'll be waiting a while because it's towards the end of the meeting.
Would you like to go home? Because if you'd like to go home, then come on up. Come on. Because we may be here a while tonight. We have a big agenda.
You could come back in 2 hours.
Good. Well, let's just do it now.
Mayor Jarvis, Destin City Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to speak today. My name is Jim Green, 824 North Lakeside Drive. I'm the president of the Lake Coleman Owners Association, and that's the lake that butts up to Main Street into Joe's Bayou. A few years ago, the old culvert system that continues the downstream flow of lake water under Main Street and into Joe's Bayou is completely redesigned. The new design is very effective and a much more functional and durable replacement compared to the old culvert system that was inundated with vegetation and slowed the flow downstream. Most homeowners on the lake were pleased with the renovation project, that is until it was completed, and showed by way of dock pylons and seawalls that the lake water depth had been lowered from historical levels. When questioning past city staff why the lake level changed, we were told it had been not. But upon looking into it further, and in my opinion from what I gathered, it was lowered to aid in some stormwater retention. That's my opinion. After the completed renovation, our association had to have the lake sprayed 3 to 4 times a year at $700 to $800 per application, when in the past only twice a year was necessary. Now we have things like Illinois pondweed has been found in our lake, and because of the way this weed must be treated, polymers and stickers, as the lake doctor said, must be used to get the herbicide to attach to the plant. Because of this change in herbicide application, the chemicals used, it raised the cost from one application from $700 to $800 to $2,400 a spray, a 4-fold increase. Raising the water level back to where it was historically will remove the sunlight from the bottom and allow for less growth and allow us to put less chemicals in the water, which runs directly into Joe's Bayou. Along with the decomposition of the dead vegetation and the removal of oxygen from the water, we are allowing an upland watershed to hinder our efforts to improve our water quality around the city. We come to you today asking for the lake level to be raised back to historic depths. Last year, a few years ago, a few homeowners and myself went to Mr. Jenkins, one of the city's contracted engineers. He developed a design for an aluminum fence that would be added to the top of the current concrete cap. In the design, it has a gate. This gate would be the same size as the current spill lip and would be removable. The removable feature would curb concerns of stormwater retention and could be opened when storms and rain events are forecasted to help mitigate flood issues. We thank you for hearing our concerns and hope that we can apply some common sense approaches to improving our water quality issues.
Captain Jim, I've got a question for you. I've lived and gone by that lake for the last 41 years. It looks to me that after they renovated it, it changed the water level by 2.5 feet. Is that close, or was it even more than that?
No, it's not quite that. It's right at about a foot. It depends on where you look. I mean, that, like I said, the old culvert system would get clogged up, and the water would fluctuate up, and then once it got enough weight on it, they would flush it out, or it would, and then, so the water level fluctuated. But at a minimum, it's a foot difference from what we can tell on the new marks on seawalls and stuff.
And just a foot difference in depth would change the issue with the growth on the bottom?
So a lot of that lake, not so much right in the center of it, because when they built Cal-Air, they used the lake that you see. You know, there's two parts to that lake. They used that to build the roadway for Cal-Air. And so that lake's a little deeper in the middle, but the back lake, where all the water comes in, and in the corners, it's kind of boomerang shaped. There's a lot of 3 to 6 foot depth in that lake right now, and I would say roughly over a third of it's probably at that depth, if not a little bit more. And by lowering that water level, you're exposing more of the bottom to sunlight, have more growth. We have to spray more chemicals. Yeah, they're aquatic herbicides, but they're still chemicals. They still kill plants. Those plants have to decompose. That affects the water quality and the oxygen content.
Anyone have any questions? Ms. Braden?
Thank you. When you spoke to Jenkins, did they design the spillway that's there now?
Yeah, I believe he did. Mr. Buckingham, I talked to Mike. He was I saw him down there messing with it whenever they were building it. He was part of that install, and I asked him, and he said that he was the one, he had input on the design, because we were talking about just adding concrete to the top of it, and they were concerned that much weight on the vinyl sheet piles might not, wasn't designed to carry a cap that big. So Mr. Jenkins came up with the aluminum gate or aluminum fence around the top, and then having the ability to have a removable gate. That's a lot of water, a foot of water, and that's it's a little over a 14-acre lake. That's quite a bit of volume. So I'm not sure exactly who did the total design of it, but I know he had something to do with it. He was very familiar with it.
Okay. Michael, do you mind can you look and see, when you have time, to see what the design was of that, and see if there's an elevation that was shot on the old spillway and what the new elevation of the new spillway is supposed to be, so we can see if there's change on that?
I can certainly do that. What year was that done again?
About 2 years ago.
I want to say it was 12 or so when they built it. I think it coincided with some of the stormwater that was done on Airport Road back then too. Or
maybe 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think,
okay,
I think it was more than that. I want to say it was more than that.
I think part of the problem Captain Green's been having is that the city a few years ago kind of denied the fact that the water level was any different, right?
Well, that was what our problem was when some of my other neighbors that are here tonight, they have pictures of water levels on seawalls and pylons that are, these are clearly time erosion of these structures that show where water levels were different before the project was done.
Questions? Go ahead, Ms. Ramsell.
So I'm trying to visualize, is this essentially like a dam that was built with a spillway that can open and shut depending on the flow?
So what it is it's sheet pile like you would with a bulkhead, corrugated sheet pile that was driven down into the lake bed, and then a concrete cap put on it, on top of it. So when you walk up to it from the road, it kind of looks like a levee, or it looks like a little dam, a little rectangular dam, and it has a spillover in the middle for what's considered the normal water flow. And then when you have a rain event, of course, it comes in over the top of all of it. And it has, instead of the one big culvert, it has 3, I believe, 8 or 10 inch culverts that now go underneath the road. and those culverts have rods driven into the concrete in front of them to help block any vegetation or anything that would overflow into it, so you didn't have that slow and flow, I should say.
What was there before that?
A big rusty corrugated culvert went under the road and came straight up, and it was just a...
And it was blocked, is that what it was? So that's why the water level
It
was
would get
higher?
blocked. They had to put, because of how big the culvert was, there, back in the day, and I don't know how long it lasted, but they had wrought iron, or not wrought iron, they had rods that were on top of it to keep big vegetation from falling in, but what would happen is that anytime you'd have a rain or even in the natural flow, there was such a volume of water that was going down that culvert that the vegetation would pile up on top of it. And whether, it would finally fall in there and clear out or whatever, it allowed the water to fluctuate in the lake because it wasn't getting the flow.
When the culvert got real old, Preble, it also collapsed and washed out the road, the entire road, for 2 times, I believe, where they had to put emergency little bridges just so we could get out of our neighborhoods to get to Main Street.
Yeah, that happened during one of the hurricanes in the 90s. I remember that.
So is the idea then to build it higher so that the water level is higher behind it?
So-
essentially like raising the level of the dam?
It would be adding about a foot collar to the top of that concrete cap, allowing the water level to rise in the lake, and having about a foot tall gate to where you would be able to have that water at that level most of the time during the year. But if you
Unless there was an emergency and you needed to open it to release.
Yeah, and if we get into, I think it takes about a day for the water level to go down a foot whenever they were building it, if I remember correctly, what I was told. But, if we get forecasted a hurricane or a tropical storm coming, city staff or even us, if we're told we can do it, we'll go pull the gate ourselves and let that water level go back down to help aid in, stormwater retention to where we don't have it come across and broach the roadway.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Mayor, I do know there's a couple more that would like to speak to this matter.
Cap, one question. I don't know if you researched, have y'all looked into as far as any cost estimates on this?
It was about a couple $1,000s. It depended on which way we went with it. Okay. It's a very small fix.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you very much. Now, that's all my blue cards, so if you'd like to come up to the podium, just raise your hand and I'll call you up. Miss Brown. Oh, she's got a blue card. I know where you live already. Thank you. Go ahead, Pat.
Patty Brown, 86 Shira Street, Destin, Florida. This is the second time that I've served on the short-term rental task force. Both times we had a great group of people that worked together really well. Our last group was made up of 3 residents, 1 hotel management person, and 2 short-term rental people. We understood that our job was recommendations. We were fortunate to have Kim Kopp there with us so that we could run things by her that we weren't quite sure. We based all of our discussions on information that was given to us by Joey, which were complaints that had come in. We had waste management there to discuss trash and what they felt was an adequate amount of trash cans per people. We do have a pretty significant rat problem in Crystal Beach, and I understand in Haldale also. So we did talk a lot about trash. Miss Bell and I voted no on the number of trash cans. We thought we needed 1 more. But as far as the majority of the topics that we discussed, we were in agreement. We had pretty extensive discussions, listening to many different views. We always had a public discussion at the end. It was well noted that we were doing these meetings. It wasn't a secret. And so I hope that you look at our recommendations tonight and know that a lot of hard work went into it and that we took this very serious in making recommendations to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Anyone else? Bill? Well, lady behind Bill? She beat you to it. I got you next, sir. Correct. Your mama taught you well.
Tamara Baker, 849 Keller Drive, Destin, with regards to raising the level of water on the lake in Keller Gardens. I am the first or the last house on the lake, depending on which way you look at it. But from a personal point of view, the water level at my end of the lake is the shallowest, which means that since it's dropped down a foot or maybe 18 inches, I now have slime. I basically have a pile of pond scum in my backyard. My husband and I work very, very hard to keep it dredged out where the underground stream is coming in and feeding fresh water into our lake. It's a constant job. We're always hauling sand, doing stuff to make sure that the rest of the lake stays as well as it can be. I do have 2 photos that I'd like to hand to you. On one of them you can see where our seawall is and where the level of the water used to be. It's very obvious from the green buildup on the pilings and where it is now. And the second photo shows a sandbar that is formed with sand that's been pushed from the creek into the lake. We're constantly trying to keep it down, move it out, but it shows you what used to be underwater is now no longer underwater. So I don't know if y'all wanted to look at, pass these down.
Thank you much. Bill?
Bill Reddington, 722 Vintage Circle, Destin, Florida. I guess what I want to suggest is, because there's about a lot of pushback on the proposed changes in the STR rules, that you give Joey a chance to enforce some of your existing laws, okay? There's, you know, because of all this, I mean, I'm looking at your budget when I'm not a budget person, kinda, but it's like, how many lawsuits have to happen? How many Bert Harris claims have to happen before you start to relax for a minute? Okay, I used to own some vacation rental properties. I never, in Crystal Beach, I never ever had a problem, okay, with the garbage, okay? At that time, we had I worked through a management company, Southern Resorts. They had a independent garbage guy that came by on Saturdays, okay? Rentals at that time were basically from Saturday to Saturday, okay? Well, the rules have changed in rentals, okay? There's a lot of 3- and 4-day rentals out there. So how are you going to enforce who cares about Saturday if the trash is sitting out there since Wednesday, kind of thing? So that selective enforcement like that, and I just think you need to rethink some of the things that they're trying to put into effect or suggesting to put into effect. Okay, if you own a house and somebody stops by and is at a time when somebody from code enforcement stops by and they don't have a sticker in their car, which is how are you going to ever enforce that? Number one. But a friend of mine stops by, he doesn't have a sticker, so he gets a ticket? I mean, that just isn't realistic. I'm sorry. So my suggestion would be to allow code enforcement to do their thing with what you have existing on the books, which apparently was not been enforced for the last few years. Let's try it what you got before you change the whole world and make people more unhappy. So y'all have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Bill. Merry Christmas to you,
Bill,
too.
can I ask you a question before you leave? Over here. Instead of the city having to write citations for trash that's left out on the road, why is the trash being left on the road to start with? When you have 2- and 3- or 4-day rentals now, people are leaving on Sundays or Tuesdays or Thursdays and the trash is out there. Who's picking that trash up when it's out there? Why is it the city's responsibility to go by there and ticket the person because he's thrown his trash out on the curb when somebody's checked out?
I get that part of it, but if you're going to have somebody that, like I had a house that slept 19 people, okay? By your rules, I'd have to have 3, I'd have 4 garbage cans there. Okay,
Let's get back to my question. Who's picking the trash up when your guest throws it out there on a
I assume
Wednesday?
the management company, because that's what they did for me.
Well, that's the problem we're dealing with, and we're not going to relax until the problem is fixed or
Well,
solved.
maybe it's time to go after the management companies then, for not doing the correct thing.
That's what we're
Okay.
talking about, is getting
But
in their
that-
pocket and
that's
fining
back
them.
That's back to code enforcement again.
But it shouldn't be our
And
responsibility.
you've required them to put a sign on every property that's however big it is, okay?
Right. But if they all took
So-
care of their own property like they should, then we wouldn't be up here discussing it
Well,
tonight.
I would be curious to see how many trash complaints there actually is.
Joey gave us a whole list, and
Yeah.
it's,
Well,
there's a lot.
I'd be prepared, I'd be curious about how many phone calls were from the same people.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Come on up. Hold on, Marcy, I'll get you next, okay?
Good evening. My name is Sean Hickey. I live at 93 Woodward Street. I served on this short-term rental committee this past time. As Jeff pointed out, the focus was to look at the three primary areas of concern: parking, trash, and noise. The trash issue is a very large issue. I live in Crystal Beach. I see it regularly where the cans are overflowing. There's bags on the side. You put in place a new ordinance. It was 2 trash cans for the first 3 rooms, if I remember correct, and so on and so on. One of the problems you have now is we also have a thing called the grandfather clause. Many homes are predicated on number of people, not bedrooms, is the problem, actually. So when you have a house with 4 bedrooms, let's say, you had 2 people per bedroom, according to the ordinance, and then you were allowed 4 additional people, which gave you 12 people. But we have houses now that have been given waivers or grandfathered to have 18 people instead of 12 people. Well, that increase in number of people increases the amount of trash that's going outside. So if you base your trash cans just on the number of bedrooms, you're going to have a problem. You won't have enough trash cans. You already don't have enough. So one of the recommendation was to move away from basing the number of trash cans on bedrooms, but rather basing it on the number of occupants. And recommendation was to use the number of people on the sign outside that would say you're allowed so many occupants, 12, 14, 18. And that would be the number that would be used to help determine the number of trash cans. We had a lengthy discussion on how many cans would be reasonable. We came up with 6 people, 1 can for 6 people. Some folks wanted more trash cans, and they argued based on experience, the number of garbage, the amount of garbage they saw next to the cans, and the fact we do have a rat problem in Crystal Beach and Holiday Isle. So we need to get the garbage off the street. And so we reached a compromise, and that's how we came up with the number of trash cans. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Marcy. You're next.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. I also was a member of the Short-Term Rental Task Force, probably the last one to speak. Some of the items that I'd like to discuss, first and foremost, is that the task force, our committee was run by Robert's Rules. I understand that there's some sort of discussion out there in the world where we're not supposed to make motions, or that presents something that we were doing nefariously. Robert's rules say you have to make a motion, it has to be seconded for discussion before you can discuss what you're supposed to be discussing. So I wanted to clarify that for the audience and those who have an issue with the fact that I made some motions out there. The second thing that I wanted to state was I support all the comments that were made by my co-committee members. We discussed that the issues were pretty much an education and communication problem. With that, parking, I made the motion for the placards. The reason that I made that motion was, my point was that all the condos and hotels give you a placard for the amount of cars that you are allowed to have when you rent one of their places to stay. It was just a suggestion that maybe that's what we would do with the short-term rentals. If they had it in their acknowledgement with their group that they were renting to, that they were only allowed to have 4 cars, 6 cars, whatever it was, that the person who was signing with them would know we're only allowed to bring 4 cars because we can only have 4 placards. If we don't have 4, if we have 5 and we don't have one, it could be an issue. That was all that was about. In reference to garbage, the Saturday valet was about the fact that that's mainly the check-in, check-out day. The number of trash cans, 5 for 5 people versus 6 people, was actually based on the waste management representative's information about how much one of the 96-gallon cans garbage would hold for that amount of time. And he did say that they had a 50% reduction in pickup on Fridays than they did on Tuesdays. So I just wanted to add that note that that information for the trash cans actually came from waste management information. The next thing I wanted to say was in reference to $500 a year for, and I've said this before up here, if you divide that amount by 12 months, that's $41.67 a month for you to have a rental, short-term rental. Or if you are renting a unit for $150 a night, that's 3.5 of your night rentals for the entire year that you have to pay to have that short-term rental. And the city of Destin is one of the lowest short-term rental registration fees in the entire state. Some of them are upwards of thousands of dollars. The next thing I wanted to tell you was that motions were made for the short-term rental acknowledgement page that's signed by those short-term rental renters, and it was not meant for it to be an ordinance. To my knowledge, if I'm incorrect, please correct me. And another gentleman here spoke about how the same people were probably calling on the same properties. The same people probably live right down the street from the same properties that are the habitual offenders. The last thing I would like to say is that code enforcement needs real teeth to go after the repeat offenders, and I would ask that you would make that happen so he can hire more people so we can get this under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Got this gentleman right here, and I see 2 hands. I'll catch you first and then him second. We got plenty of time, so everybody gets to speak.
Good evening, Tim Taylor, 10 Noriega Road, Destin. Council members, thank you. And thanks to the short-term rental committee. I've owned, and with my wife, Ocean Reef Resorts now for 38 years. We have 550 properties in our management program. I worked for Sandestin Resorts 7 years prior to that, and then the front desk of hotels in Waikiki and Maui prior to that. So I do qualify, I feel, as an expert, starting out in the hotels, but now managing homes. And the homes have created a lot more angst in various communities where there's no homeowners association. As example, Crystal Beach. Those owners are relying on the city of Destin. They're relying on you council members to help them because they don't have their own government. Most of us do. On Holiday Isle, we have our own government, but they won't. That board of directors will not put in trash pickup into the daily, into our monthly dues. My wife and I own in Sandestin. Garbage is picked up every day throughout the entire resort, privately by the Master Homeowners Association, and it's built in our dues. Holiday Isle has that same ability, they just won't do it. So there'd be no trash, and you have a roving patrol going every single day. But the primary point of contact for the city of Destin is going to be the registration that an owner signs, because not every owner is going to be on a management program like Ocean Reef Resorts or Newman Daily or Southern, and these are companies that know we pick up the garbage not on a Saturday, we pick up the garbage the day the guest checks out. So if it's a 3-day rental, 4-day rental, we're picking up the garbage ourselves. But people think they're doing the right thing. If they're on vacation and they've got a garbage can by their house and it's full, they think they're doing the right thing by pulling it out. And so we've worked with Waste Management. It's going to have a concierge truck running in South Walton, a block or 2 south of 98, I believe, and a block or 2 north. And this truck's going to run all the time because it's a resort community. You could ask Waste Management the same thing. When they want the franchise, say, look, we're a resort town. We have communities where you need to have a truck going around there because people pull stuff out. Just tell them, if we want underground utilities. But that registration fee, everything you want needs to be on that registration form. And because many owners aren't using a professional management company. And that way, if code enforcement can really write a ticket, that'll help if people are self-managing their property. And but for $500 a house, god dang, code enforcement could pick up the garbage at these houses for $500 a home. That's a lot of houses. I'll help. We'll buy a truck. But thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Tim. Next.
Good evening. Phil Studley, Southern Vacations. I second what this gentleman just said. The good companies are out there, and we are picking up the trash as soon as these guests are checking out. We are working with code enforcement. We have signs up in there. We are sending out emails, apps. We've got an app that sends out an email before they get there. It tells them everything about our pickup, and we're doing our bit. If there's a trash violation, we go along with our with our vans, picking up ourselves. We do that quite often. So I think you do what we've said before and let Joey do his job. Let him enforce the rules and stop punishing the people who are actually trying to make Destin the town it is, and stop making these guests come to town and they're being fined, and the actual the rental companies are the ones who are paying it because they're going and leaving the debt with us. So at the end of the day, you're kind of punishing the people who are working with you guys to make this better. So that's all I want to say.
Bill, run it.
Good evening, council members. My name is Carl Seekamp. I live at 4589 Woodwind Drive in Destin, and I'm here to speak tonight in regard to ordinance 1931-LC that I believe is on the agenda tonight to vote on as far as rezoning of the property that's adjacent to my home near Sovereign Isle.
Carl, I'm going to let you come up and speak during the public hearing portion.
Okay.
Okay, so you can take a
So
seat
stand
right
by?
now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll open, when we get to that ordinance, we're going to open it up for public comment, and you do it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add to anything that's on the agenda or not on the agenda, other than a public hearing issue? Seeing no further comment, I think we'll close this portion, and we shall move on with our city manager report. And we may get about halfway through the city manager report. We might take a break, see how fast we go first. All right? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4B, purchase authorization for GPS surveying equipment. The current equipment that the city has is over 10 years old, and we are asking for council's blessing to purchase some new equipment. You'll notice there are some lesser expensive options listed. I just want you all to know that that's not apples to apples comparison. Those lesser units do not have all of the characteristics that the one that staff is recommending have. And if you have any additional questions, Mr. Burgess can answer those for you.
If you need a motion on that, I'll make it.
Go ahead.
Please.
I'll make a motion that we allow them to purchase the GPS equipment.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a second. I'm going to weigh in with just one word of advice when it comes to GIS and GPS. And this is, don't go cheap. Trust me. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's take it to a vote.
You didn't make the recommended motion, Mayor?
Apologies, I did not see that, but I amend that to the recommended motion.
The motion was to move the city manager be authorized to purchase new GPS surveying equipment from FLT in the amount of $24,928.
That's the motion.
I apologize, I did not read that part. I was just
Okay, we'll just
getting
go
off
with you,
the fly.
Rodney. That's the motion. We have a second? Whoever seconded it last time? If that's okay?
Yeah, let's just do that as a substitute motion for the record.
Okay. So Rodney, substitute motion, is that okay with the second?
I'll second it since I made it.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Vote unanimous, so moved.
Item 4C is with regards to the low-speed vehicle or LSV policy and revising the low-speed vehicle map. Back in 2006 timeframe, council at that time approved a golf cart ordinance. Staff has updated that to align with state statutes and updated the map to show where low-speed vehicles, which are legal on the roadways, can operate now in the city. And this is before you for your consideration.
Before Mr. Morgan speaks, how many here besides me had to read this 2 or 3 times? But thank you, Rodney. I feel better. Yeah, it was tough to decipher. Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
So we're proposing adding Airport Road as a low-speed vehicle road?
Yes, and that is one that aligns with the state statute at 35 miles per hour or less.
But we don't have to do this?
No.
Okay. Judging on Officer Nix's reaction here, I don't want to do that, so I can make a motion to exclude that and update our policy, but Airport Road is not a good addition.
Chatham, I actually would think maybe go a little bit further than just Airport Road and just take all the roads that usually get gridlocked during our peak traffic times as exclusionary roads, which would be, some of them are already there, Mountain and Azalea, but then there's that little zigzag on Benning, and then, of course, Legion and Airport, because we don't need those vehicles.
We don't need high-speed vehicles on Airport Road most of the time, so.
I just figured I'd add that because I knew where you're going.
I wonder how the low-speed vehicles would take the turn, though.
They'll outrun everybody.
Better.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to make a motion right now.
Okay. Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. So I have a question regarding the map with the highlighted routes that's in our agenda packet. And Airport is green, as is one section of Indian Bayou Trail. And I'm just wondering if someone can explain what the green is as opposed to the blue?
Roads allowed. It's in the little agenda. It's on the top.
Because I didn't see that. Oh my God, it's the key. It's the legend of the map, and I missed it. Okay. What's that expression? If it had been a snake, it would have bit me? Okay. Got it. Because I know one of the thoughts that they had when they were discussing this was trying to facilitate a way east-west while staying off the major roads. But unfortunately, Airport is now a major road essentially here. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. I just happen to own a low-speed vehicle, but mine is a gasoline model, and I did discuss this with Mr. Bowman earlier today. The top speed that when it's governed on the gasoline models is 25 miles per hour. And the reason I bring that up is that I drive mine from home to work and use it at work. And one of the proposed routes, and now although this ordinance does not address the gasoline models other than the speed, you can change the governors and make it up to a top speed of about 28 miles per hour. But the problem I see, one problem is on the map, you've got Mountain Drive is restricted, and Mountain Drive is at 25 miles per hour. That's one of the things that I looked at, and then there's a section. You've got it as restricted. Mountain Drive is 25, so therefore low-speed vehicles should be allowed on Mountain Drive, sure, as it is at, and actually coming across from Melvin and from Melvin also. All of those streets are under, although most of the residential streets, with the exception of part of Melvin. But if you look at Mountain Drive, we have it at 25 miles an hour. Now nobody drives it at 25 miles an hour. I can tell you that, even with all the four-way stops that we've added. But that is at 25 miles an hour. And the other issue I have is that you've got that section of Stallman. From let's see, I have to strain to look at the map there. Oops, I just messed up. Because you can't read the map very clearly. I like the colors though. Where Stallman Avenue comes in at Azalea, We have a situation there where there are some shuttle, some gasoline-powered low-speed shuttle vehicles that use that also to come from our city parking lots to take people to Harbor Walk Village and also to several of the other properties. They just cross the highway there. They do not go on Highway 98, but at Stallman, and that in particular, that's what I do. And therefore, you'd be restricting me from being able to take my vehicle from my home on Kelly Street to work.
But what you're saying is we need to make a few changes to
Well,
our map?
well, as I talked to Mr. Bowman about it today, we don't address the gasoline models except for the speed.
And let me make a clarification. The term low-speed vehicle is defined in the statute as vehicles that are between 20 miles per hour and 25 miles per hour. So it's not the gasoline distinction, it's the speed at which the vehicle can travel that the statute makes a distinction on.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to make a motion to take no action on this tonight.
I got a motion.
I'll second it.
We got a second. Any further discussion on this? Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, so we're not going to take any action. I think we need to go further than that. If we don't say something else, staff's not going to do anything else. So I think we need to take a look at it and ask staff to revisit this and come back with an update. The motion itself says take no action, but it doesn't task staff to do anything. So I would just suggest that we at least ask them to come back with an updated on that based on
I'll
the...
agree with that and withdraw my second.
How do you want us to, what type of information do you want us to bring back?
Well, what I'm saying is, Kyron just brought up the issues along Mountain Drive where, according to what he says, a low-speed vehicle would be allowed by law. So, and that was an issue about that, about the shuttles there. So do we need to revisit that? Should we as a city allow that or not? If it's legally authorized, you know, if we don't ask you all to do something, this thing just dies and all your work goes for nothing. So I'm just saying, what do we need to do to move it along?
Very good. I mean, and I just confirmed that we do have the ability as a municipality to be stricter than the state statute. So we can restrict some of these roadways if that's the council's desire.
Well, I think what Kyron's bringing out, though, Lance, is that the keys that you show us in these roads, there's a couple of them that show that this proposed policy would restrict travel where we need travel to get people that are, like in Kyron's case, coming from their neighborhood trying to get to the harbor. Because there's a couple of them that in your proposal here that ban that from happening. So we almost need to kind of revisit the recommended open and closed roads to low-speed vehicles. Is that basically correct? Is that?
It was my understanding that the proposed roads were the ones in green, which was Airport Road and Two Trees. Everything else was already allowed. And we've already said that we really don't want Airport Road, a bunch of golf carts on Airport Road, so, I mean, the only change would be made would be they would be allowed right on Two Trees. Is that not correct?
Just the green ones, right?
I will bring this back at the next meeting with that information. What the information I'm receiving is the Mountain Drive, Azalea Drive, where it's showing red right now, was part of the original golf cart policy, and we just didn't recommend a change in that area, and we can certainly recommend that change.
That's what I think we'd like to do it in one swoop. Let's make those changes, come back before the council, and we'll make those changes. Because like, it's basically two laws, the old golf cart law and then the new definitions of slow-speed vehicles. And we're in a multimodal traffic type thing, so we have to encourage those type of vehicles to use our roads. I just think they need to come back with a more complete recommendation, and then we can vote on it next go around.
I'll be glad to work with staff too, since I have this.
You know, I'll say if we're going to not allow these vehicles on Airport Road, it begs the question, you know, they're currently allowed on Commons Drive, and is that necessary or safe? Yeah.
I mean, by state statute, the Commons Drive and Airport Road meet the criteria for them to be on there and operating, but that's a council decision. We can go stricter than what the state statute says. By doing so, and I don't own one of these, so I have no dog in this hunt, but by doing so, we're cutting off people that have a golf cart and live on the east side of town from going to the west side of town, so, and vice versa. So just.
Well, we have a motion. Oh, you withdrew it. So we have a motion without a second. So I'm just going to say that motion dies for lack of a second. And then we've just given them direction we'll revisit this at our next council meeting. Preble?
Thanks. I was like, it keeps disappearing. So a few points, and one of them is, if you look at where Commons intersects Airport, if I am not mistaken, the new development that we approved that's going in at 98 Palms, isn't it part of their development plan to actually make that right-of-way from Airport at Commons straight across that right-of-way all the way down? So that in essence, that would be another bypass that could utilize golf carts and low-speed vehicles, and it would be not a main thoroughfare such as Airport?
Yeah, I believe you're correct, once that roadway's finished.
So that might be an alternative that we should consider. And then the other thing, I don't know what to do about Commons, because clearly we know it is over capacity. Based on the studies that we've seen, it's almost to the point that 98 is at. What is happening on 98? Is there space on 98? Well, no, we don't want them on 98, so there went that.
And it's
idea.
against Florida statute
Yeah.
for them to be on a state highway, so that's off the map. I think we've got to be careful not to confuse capacity with the type of vehicle, because whether they're in a gas-powered car or electric car, they're still going to be using the corridor. So do we want pollution-free electric cars to be able to use it, or?
Well,
add to
I'm
the
looking at
pollution?
it from a traffic point of view, because just like we don't want low-speed vehicles and golf carts on 98 because they can impede traffic, slow down traffic, et cetera, I think the same is true for Commons. I've gotten stuck on Commons behind golf carts and low-speed vehicles. So that's my point.
Sorry, Ms. Ramsel. I just want to comment for council that Commons, half of the jurisdiction is with the county too, and half is with the city. So we would need to coordinate that with the county, I would think, if we're going to change the policy there.
And while I appreciate Kyron's comment about needing to cross over 98, really the point is, as we said, is to keep the vehicles, low-speed vehicles, off of 98, which would, to me, include crossing, right? So we've got city parking lots over there that could be utilized for that purpose. We have crossings, et cetera. So I would say I don't want to see them crossing 98 at all.
That kills the shuttle, though. We want them parking over there so they're not walking across 98. So, I mean, this is a catch-22 situation, really, when it comes down to it. Mr. Marler, I got him.
To address what Preble was just saying, and also what I had planned on saying before she mentioned that, if we do it properly, you can only cross 98 at a signaled area. And again, you're crossing 98, you're not driving down 98. We've had several incidents, and I'm sure that Captain Nix can say that. We've had a couple of those that have driven down 98 in the last couple of weeks, as far as I understand. He's shaking his head, yes, because I've heard of several incidents. But at designated stoplights, I would say you could cross 98 to get from point A to point B, because if you go down into the Crystal Beach area and look at that area there, you've got the county's Commons Drive area there, and then you should be able to cross the street to get to the Crystal Beach area. And like I said, the same with the area where I drive from my home to work, but only at designated areas, and I think we can do some signage there that would help. to go back to what the motion, there is a motion for adopting it, but I think what we need to do is, instead of a motion, and if Kyle doesn't have a problem with this, is just have staff come back with it.
I think that's what, Lance, you were getting at, is you're going to bring it back, correct?
Yep, that is correct.
I'm okay with
It'll
that.
be on next city manager's report, right? Okay, guys. Everybody good? All right, we're going to move on to electrical services, continuing service contract. Go ahead, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Electrical Services, Continuing Services Contract. We have Mr. Burgess here to present this item for council consideration.
Good evening, council, Mr. Mayor. The bid committee received bid packages from several electrical contractors and met to review those, and out of that meeting came a recommendation to recommend D&D Heating and Air and Electrical Services for our continuing services contract effective January 1. And that'll run through September 30, and we'll go through the normal renewal process this summer.
We are looking for a motion to approve this contract.
I'll make the motion. I move that RFB 1907-PW miscellaneous electrical continuing services contract be awarded to the lowest priced responsive bidder, D&D Air Conditioning, Heating, and Electrical Services, and authorize the city manager to execute this contract on behalf of the city.
Got a motion?
I'll
and
second that motion.
I have a second. Is there any further comment? Go ahead, Ms. Ramswell.
I have just a process question, and that is, when we receive multiple bids for a project, is it an automatic, we accept the lowest bid, or do you actually take a look at the bids competitively and determine what they're offering and do sort of a comparison of a bid versus another bid rather than just price?
We picked the lowest responsible bidder, so there's more than just the price. Responsive means they actually give us all the information we've asked for, and responsible means their reputation is such that we would agree to enter into a contract with them. So those two other factors can influence the decision.
Thanks.
Okay, got a motion, got a second. Seeing no further discussion. Unanimous, so moved. Sir.
Likewise, generator maintenance services, bids were received for that item. Mr. Burgess is going to present that also.
That's correct, Mr. City Manager. We did receive 2 responses for this one. No, I believe it was 3, I'm sorry. Let me pull that up here. There we go. For generator, we did receive 3 responses. And after, again, the big committee reviewing those, and I provided you all with price comparisons for that, and there was one little slight error on that. I put that it was a semi-annual cost for the generator services, but it's an annual cost. But Metro Power was the lowest responsive bidder, and they have a great reputation, and the current pricing in the yellow column is one of the 3 respondents, and their prices, of course, over the course of time go up. But Metro Power is a fantastic company, and I look forward to working with them if you also please.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at the bid committee meeting minutes of November the 12th, the finance director recommended that the sheriff's office generator be taken off the contract because it was put on there. I realized the contract was dated a couple of days after that, so you're going to have to go back and have them resubmit that without that information.
Yes, sir. The Sheriff's Department substation on Stallman Avenue, that generator's been out of service for several years.
I understand, and kudos to the finance director for catching that, okay? At any rate, but again, as I saw the contract written, it included that, so it's, again, just a reminder to take that out.
We certainly will.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. Anyone?
I can make that motion.
Thank you, sir.
I move that RFB 19-12 PW miscellaneous generator continuing services contract be awarded to the lowest priced responsive bidder, Metro Power, Inc., and authorize the city manager to execute this contract on behalf of the city.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
All right, do I have a discussion?
Yes, I do.
Lay it on me.
Where is Metro Power located as far as an office? That's question number one.
Metro Power is located at 2303 US Highway 98 in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida.
Okay, that's question number one.
Local company.
And question number two, did not Ronco, and is this the generator that Ronco installed?
Yes, sir. All the generators that we have currently have several years on them, and Ronco was our continuing services provider and have been for years. We actually have the new City Hall generator slated to be installed week after next, and Ronco will be doing that for us.
Okay.
So I have a motion, and I have a second. No further discussion? Ayes have it, so moved. Item F, be ready,
Item F
Skip.
is pest control continuing services contract. Again, staff went out to bids for this, and Mr. Burgess will again be presenting this item.
Okay, good evening again. We did have a few respondents for our pest control annual services contract. Our current provider is Florida Pest Control, and they were again the low responsible bidder. And just coincidentally, their prices actually went down a little bit, shockingly.
I move that RFB 19-10-PW miscellaneous pest control continuing services contract be awarded to the lowest price responsive bidder, Florida Pest Control, and authorize the city manager to execute this contract on behalf of the city.
I got a motion.
Second.
Second. Discussion, are you up there, Steve? You have a question on this one? Go ahead.
I see that we have several of our buildings that the sheriff's office and the fishing museum that are on here, we're paying those bills. I question, why are we doing that, not them? I know, but they pay everything else.
Okay, we've been taking care of their pest control for quite a while now. It's been, I haven't been here that long, but we've been taking care of that for the museum, the substation on Stallman Avenue for quite a while. And if you go through the lease, it's not something specifically required, but it's just something that we have been doing for years.
Mr. Braden?
I would ask that question again. Why are we paying that just because we've been doing it for years? Maybe nobody's caught it and it's time to change. And why is the electrical packet or sheet part of this packet as well?
I created the spreadsheet to cover all three continuing services contracts so you can kind of see them all side by side. Instead of opening three documents, you just have to open one.
So, Passing, Mr. Braden. Is that all you had?
Yes, sir, that's all I have.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Morgan.
So just for context, and I understand Mr. Minchel's point, if y'all would like to make a substitute motion to amend that, I think $81 a year for the fishing museum. It's $108. And a little more for this, so about $324 for the two facilities. Which, if y'all would like to make a substitute motion or just approve this contract.
Not seeing any further discussion, let's take it to a vote. Existing motion. Vote unanimous, so moved. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4G is a recommendation of Volkert Engineering to provide traffic engineering assessment for the Stallman Avenue US 98 intersection and that vicinity. A few months back, council directed staff to work on bringing this back, and it is before you for your consideration tonight. At that point in time, I believe that council allocated up to $50,000 to be used towards this project. Mr. Burgess can answer any questions, or I again can answer any questions you may have.
Lance, if we approve this, do you have any idea how long it's going to take to get something back?
Mr. Burgess has discussed this with the engineering firm. I'll let him take this.
Okay, we've initially reached out to all of our continuing services providers, asking if they had any interest in this. The reason that Volkert was specifically identified is they are the engineer of record on the 3R project, and because a lot of this work associated with this study will be utilities, property, encumbrances, existing utilities and things that might have to be adjusted, and they already have traffic information and studies available to them. They seem to be the natural fit for this study. The scope of work has not been ironed out exactly. I do have one that I will be sharing with Volkert, and this is not necessarily to negotiate a contract, to have the city manager authorized to sign a contract, is to begin that negotiation process to see what the scope of work actually will be.
Do you have your best guess as to how long it would take for them to
I would
come back?
probably say anywhere from six months to a year.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Last time this came up, I had the same comment. I thought it was a huge waste of money to spend $50,000 on this intersection when the county's already planning on doing a total redesign of this intersection. I believe it was 2024 with a design cost of like $150,000. So we'd just be throwing, why would we spend $50,000 to somebody to design an intersection that we can't do anything with to start with, and the county's already planning on redesigning it anyhow?
I can tell you from previous council meetings and the discussion at those meetings that council wanted a firm say-so in how that intersection was going to look. And so that's when we were tasked with getting an engineering firm to give us some of those options. And then we can hand those options off to the county. But it's still up to you guys which way you want to go.
So you don't think we would have any input whatsoever with the county as they were designing it?
I do think we would have input with the county, but I think if we went into it with a firm plan in hand, it would just make that transition easier.
I just want to remind you, Rodney, we're the ones that told him to do this. This council did. Well, what, 4 meetings ago? When we took up this, well, it was right after it was during October or September, I believe, when we were talking about the Crosstown Connector, Stallman, and all that. This didn't just come out of nowhere.
I know, last time it came up.
He's just responding to what we told him to do. So do we want to not do it or not?
But that's why I said last time I didn't vote for it, because the county's already said they're spending up $150,000 for a total redesign of this intersection. And I just hate to spend $50,000 just so we have something to look at to give to the county.
So now we're sending our city manager and our staff 2 different messages.
I think also part of this was to expedite the process to try to improve our rankings with the TPO to get this money faster from the state, to expedite it a couple years, because we are doing the Highway 98 redesign, which we had gotten bumped up on the TPO list several spots. And this was kind of a commitment to FDOT that we're serious about this, and hopefully we'd knock off a year or 2, because it is such a big problem. Yeah, well, the county's going to pitch in some half-cent sales tax, is what they had committed to doing. And then we had also discussed during that meeting of using some of the half-cent sales tax that we discussed earlier to parlay that with the county's money and as assigned to the TPO to get it expedited even further. And that's kind of the way you get things to speed up with FDOT and TPO, is putting your own skin in the game. And since the county's committed money, and since we do have funds available that are unallocated from the half-cent sales tax, you know, and this council, obviously, we had a workshop just on the Stallman Avenue intersection. It's obviously a priority to us. I think that's the idea. I think the 50,000 that we threw towards it was sort of an arbitrary number, actually, when really the plan was to discuss what to do with our half-cent sales tax, and could this expedite the process and get it done.
Yeah, and Mr. Ramswell, if you wait just one second, I'd like for Skip, who's our TPO representative, to kind of weigh in on this discussion to round it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly what Chatham said is exactly correct. But and it's the TPO that, I mean, it's FDOT. It's actually going to do all the work. And they have a list, and it's a 5-year list. And right now, we're not in the top 10, but we could be if we can give them something to actually work with. And they've continually asked us to just give them something. If we tell them what we want, they'll do it for us. But we haven't told them anything, and that's always kind of their stumbling block, is that everybody else is telling them what they want, and so they give it to them, and we don't tell them what we want. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to give them something that we can tell them. And by getting this engineering firm to design, give us some options that we're going to design, and then get that to FDOT, that will get us up on the list and maybe get it done a lot faster.
Thank you, Skip. Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. So I know that we had some in-depth conversations at that workshop that we held about the connector, and I believe a couple of the commissioners were here and some FDOT folks, and we had brainstormed a few different ideas of what might work or what we might like to see at that intersection. So what I'm getting at is, can we not at least give them some sort of list and say, you know, we talked about, you know, having Zerby dead end, or we talked about going under the road. Just give them a few things that were discussed at that meeting so they at least know what we're thinking, and it gives them some sort of something to go by in terms of what we're seeking, what they could do, et cetera.
That's the whole purpose, I believe, of this recommendation. You wrapped it
Right,
in a
but
nutshell.
I understand a recommendation, but I want a recommendation with suggestions or ideas.
No, I think we can absolutely make those suggestions, that we want those items considered and brought back for feasibility.
So I'm looking for a motion then. You had a recommended motion on this too, didn't you, sir? Go ahead. Go ahead, Chatham.
I move to authorize the city manager to negotiate with Volker Engineering, one of the City of Destin's continuing service engineering consultants, to provide an engineering analysis and report for the Stallman Avenue US 98 area not to exceed $50,000.
I got a motion.
Second.
Got a second. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4H is a recommendation to select Volker Engineering to design a guardrail system for a portion of Airport Road known as the Curve. And Mr. Burgess can handle that item also.
Okay, I'll just introduce it. Council tasked us a few weeks ago to look into installing some guardrail on the curve. And kind of the precursor to that would be getting an engineering design for such guardrail. And so again, because all of our continuing services consultants are qualified to do this work, and they're already here with the 3R project, we decided to go with Volker Engineering as our recommendation. And they have been in communication with them, just trying to get estimates for the cost of such work to do the design. And they came back with $18,000 to $22,000 to do the guardrail design. And they said that could be accomplished within 6 to 8 weeks.
Mr. Mitchell.
I don't even know where to start on this one. Again, Obviously, we discussed this for some time at several of our other meetings. My first question is, our new engineer, is he not capable of doing this work?
He is not a traffic engineer, so we feel that it is in our best interest, liability-wise, and the whole gamut, that we get a traffic engineering firm to handle this.
Okay, that's question one, thank you. Second thing is, through all of the debate and stuff that we had, we basically strictly asked for a guardrail, knowing what we found out at the last meeting, that it's going to be next year before the state takes on the project. It'll be at least next summer before it begins, as it stands right now, if it goes through. So we wanted the temporary guardrail. And here, the information we got also talks about drainage modifications. We didn't talk about drainage modifications at all, and I'm having a hard time understanding why we need drainage modifications if we put in a couple of poles along the roadway. The poles certainly aren't going to impact water. So it looks like we're spending money for what?
There was additional information included in this agenda item that may or may not come to fruition. The motion itself is to engage Volkert Engineering to design the installation of the guardrail and any other recommendations they may have along those lines. So I understand your point.
But and I'm going to get to the recommendation. I look at this, and it seems like we can't stay on point. All we're trying to do is get guardrails. I understand if there's any kind of electrical things that would have to be moved, we're putting that. But to even consider drainage, we're muddying the water. I just don't get it. Now, in regards to the recommended alternative, which I think is a great idea, would we need engineering for that, or is that something the city could do on their own?
If that's the recommended motion, I can reach out to Volkert in the morning, and we can have that conversation.
No, I'm asking, can we put the alternative in place ourselves? Can we, the city, do that, or do we have to go to Volkert to find out we can do that also?
Again, Councilor Mitchell, I'd kind of feel the same way that the city manager conveyed about the guardrail. I feel it would be in our best interest to go ahead and have them sign off on that officially than us just go by those low Jersey barriers and install them ourselves.
Okay.
It's just it's a comfort level.
The other thing, and Mr. Mitchell, I should have mentioned this in the beginning. I mean, we had our risk manager, who happens to be AKA our human resource manager also, look into this with our insurance, and they recommended that we had to have this engineered before we install it.
And I'm good with that. I'm just asking questions to get answers, okay? So we go to the engineer, but the alternative, those cement barriers as an alternative, what would they cost as opposed to the guardrail between 75 and 85?
Okay, certainly we can look into that, and I can get Ray that information tomorrow. But it was just an alternative that was kind of offered up late last week.
Okay, again, I don't have a problem with the alternative, especially if we could get it done sooner than later, okay? But again, we don't have all the information here. I'll stop for now.
Mr. Marlar.
Okay, I'm going to try to address some of this from previous experience on council.
I'll take a break after this one.
Part of the issue with the what you were talking about water management or whatever it was.
I thought you were going to weigh in.
We have an ordinance that any construction is done where if there's any displacement of water, guardrails are not going to be just a couple of poles, number one. But first, before I say that, I'm opposed to the whole thing. I'll tell you why. It is still not going to help the situation. The situation is the speed of the people driving on the road. It has nothing to do with the guardrails. All I see is liability. All I see is fatalities. Because you hit a brick wall, you hit a metal guardrail, you are going to cause more damage than what already happens now. Better that they run into a ditch and hit the county's fence and at least survive than hit a concrete barrier or a big metal guardrail, because I have seen firsthand, I used to ride with the Sheriff's Department when I was a young person as a ride-along. I've seen firsthand what happens when the car splits in half and the person does not make it. But we have a lot of ordinances in place that require engineering and all of those things that Mr. Mitchell is bringing up. I understand Mr. Mitchell's frustration, but if we don't follow our own rules, how can we enforce those rules on anybody else? So that's the thing. We have to follow our own rules. And again, I'm opposed to it because that is not the solution. The guardrails, the concrete barrier is not the solution. Whatever we have to do to keep people from speeding is the solution. I have tested the road in various speeds, and if you go the speed limit or the 25, which we recommend at the curve, or the speed limit, which is 35, and up to just 40, you can easily make that curve without any problem. If you go past 40 and go 45 or above, you run a risk of losing control. So the problem is education and getting people to slow down, not barriers. Thank you.
Did you test that in your golf cart?
No, but I did in my big pickup truck.
Ms. Ramswell.
Well, a lot of what my questions were have been answered through Mr. Menschel's questions, but I do have one question, and that is this whole plan that we're looking to get done. Are we looking at putting the guardrail in the median on the curve? Because when I read something, it said the north side of 98, which to me implies the sort of northwest-bound lanes, which would be up against the airport property. Can someone clarify that?
The guardrail, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Mitchell, was supposed to be in between Airport Road and the airport property.
You're asking Mr. Menschel?
Yeah, that was my belief, that it's on the, as you're going out of town, or I guess as you're going toward Old Destin, it'd be on the right-hand side of the road, in between the road and the sidewalk.
Okay, so I have more questions based on that. And so if that is part of the airport property, now keep in mind, they already have those brick columns with whatever's between the brick columns. They're broken every week. I thought one of the things that we were trying to do was prevent cars that were going southeast or whatever around that corner from crossing over into the traffic going north and west. That's not going to resolve that issue at all.
That's not what we asked for.
So, and this is just me because I don't know what we've asked for, but when I'm visioning this in my head, that's what I had pictured based on the flow of traffic and how people are coming around that corner. Because if they're going around this corner too fast, well, the northwest-bound traffic is going to keep going right into that broken piece of the airport boundary that it's always broken. But if it's the cars that are going east and then south are going too fast, they're the ones that are going to cut across the median into the oncoming traffic. So I thought we were looking at something to be more preventative in that median.
Okay, we can certainly add that. We can have the guardrail in the median and a guardrail to the outside in between Airport Road and the airport.
And then my next comment/question is, I believe last year when we were going through all the Heritage Park information and we had requested another plan or something for the park and we had to bid that back out, I believe it was only $46,000 for the entire park plan. Does anybody recall whether that sounds right or not? Because I'm questioning the amount here for a guardrail. That just seems like an extensive amount of money to come up with a plan for a guardrail system.
Well, the key word is system. It's not just a guardrail. They're going to evaluate everything that's been spoken so far up to this point shows the need to have an engineering firm that's approved FDOT engineering firm to design a guardrail system because it's not as simple as a couple posts in the ground and a piece of metal across it.
No, and that's not at all what I'm saying. I've never once said that I didn't think we needed an engineering firm to do it. My question is, you know, what specifically will they be doing for that type of money? Is that not too expensive? And are we asking them for the right thing?
Okay, they'll be doing some surveying, and they'll be doing utility locates, and weighing whether or not any of those utilities would have to be relocated, and that would require an engineering drawing for the foundations of the guardrail. And then the guardrail, there are, exemptions like how close it can be to a sidewalk, and how far it has to be off the road, and all those considerations will be taken into account.
Yeah, where the guardrail starts and where it stops, and if we're going to have
Exactly.
one on one side of the road or two sides of the road. I don't think that anybody of our staff or engineers want to take that responsibility onto them, and I don't think Mr. Bowman would like for us to do that for the inevitable court case when a car actually hits one of these guardrails. That is an FDOT.
Let's just let them all have a head-on collision then. I mean, that whole
No, I'm
point
not
is to put
saying-
up a guardrail to help prevent head-on collisions and such.
I agree. There's not a question whether we need a guardrail system. The big argument here is whether we hire a firm to design one, because somebody wants to just build one tomorrow, and other people want to do more jurisprudence and make sure we get the right one built that not only helps it actually and prevents deaths and damage, but doesn't expose us to legal risk, which is my concern the most.
Can I chime in real quick to answer Councilwoman Ramswell's previous
you're
question?
next.
Don't even remember my question now.
Well, you'll remember it. I mean, the original motion was to install a guardrail in the median and on the north side. It was both. So just,
Fantastic. Okay,
I
good.
I had never got a chance to answer Michael about that, but I go back to this, when Tuffy Dixon was sitting in his seat, and I stood there as the Public Works Director, Public Safety Chairman, the council unanimously approved, and that hasn't changed, exactly what you just said. So the one part of the guardrail is not that. And just to clarify, and I'll speak when you call, but I'm not arguing at all about a design engineer firm. I just asked a simple question. I have no problem. If you don't ask a question, you can't get an answer. But for us to contract with somebody, fine. I just wanted to know, could our engineer do it? So I have no problem with that. I don't want anybody that I'm against that. I'm not against that at all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Overdeer.
Okay, all right. My only question is, what are the pros and cons of this alternate proposal that they're talking about doing these, the low-profile barriers, similar to what they're using out here on 98 now, when they divert all the traffic? What are the pros and cons of that? Because it's my understanding that doing this engineering thing could uncover a whole lot of things that we're going to need to do, like moving utilities and doing everything else, and not to mention what the cost of it's going to be. So are these low speed or low profile barriers, is that a viable option for us to use those?
Okay, Mr. Warnke's email to me said that, says another option, I'm going to read it verbatim, another option that you may want to consider if the FDOT is still going to move forward with the high friction surface treatment project, would to be installed temporary low profile barriers. This should be able to be done without having impacts to the existing drainage structures or utilities. So I guess the temporary nature of it.
Why would they have to be temporary? Why couldn't we just put them up and leave them up? And do the low friction, whatever the road surface is? I mean, are they not comparable to guardrails, or are they not? They're not as good a solution as guardrails.
These I can't get that out of my mouth tonight. Low profile barriers are the same ones that you see on the 98 project right now. They're about 18 inches tall, about 18 inches thick. So they could be temporary, or they could be of more permanent fixture. That could be something that we could have the engineer look at.
Mr. Braden.
When does it come a point where we put this out for bid? Is it anything over $15,000?
That's correct.
So the $18,000 to $22,000 estimate we got just to design a guardrail, we can actually put that out for bid to see if we can get a better price, because that just seems a lot of money to $22,000 to design an $85,000 guardrail. Well, maybe something the council may want to consider putting it out for bid.
I'm sorry, when you said that, I thought you were talking about bidding on the installation. The professional services that an engineering firm has is subject to a different set of rules, and we can't select them based on their price.
So if they said the design fee on this was going to cost us somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000, we just have to go with it. We have no say-so on that.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So if they told us that our design fee was going to be $50,000 or $60,000, we just had to swallow it, and we have no say-so in that?
Well, the say-so we have is we don't have to enter into a contract with them. The state statute requires us to base our decision based on their qualifications.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Mitchell,
Okay, we'll try to move this along.
please. I'm taking a break after this regardless.
That'll be fine. You have my approval.
Hang in there, folks.
Obviously, we were talking about guardrails, and a suggestion came up about the alternative, okay? As much as I say, kick the can down the road again, the cost for the cement barriers may be much less than the guardrail, okay? So if we're making a decision on one thing, you may come back to us with more information that we're going to change our mind again. So as much as I hate to say kick the can down the road and wait till the next meeting, I would like you to have all of the information available so that way we can make an informed decision. I understand it has to be engineered, but we don't know what the cost is. It appears, I don't know this for a fact, but it appears those cement barriers, you wouldn't be worried about anything because it's on top of the roadway. So it appears that might be a quick fix. In regards to FDOT, since we threw in the towel and we're not involved in it at all, and they're going to be engineering it completely, we don't know what they're going to do. So this is strictly temporary. I don't know that this is going to be permanent, but between now and next year, when they tentatively may start working on this, at least we're going to save a life. I can tell you, I got phone calls, and I lost track, but I think around 10 phone calls since I've been talking about this, and no one complained to me about trying to save a life. I understand what Kyron's saying. There's a potential for that. There certainly is, but there's certainly a much greater potential, as Dr. Ramswell said, about a car going across the median and hitting a head-on. And if I can save some family member's child, a wife, I want to do that. We've been talking about this and talking about it, so I would move that we postpone it till the next council meeting. At that time, you all come to us with all of the information, how much it's going to cost, what's the best way to go, and then we can move forward with it. If that's a motion, or if we need just an agreement, Mayor, whatever works.
Direction is fine, but if you want to make it in the form of a motion, that's also fine.
Either or. I mean, if you're good with direction, so be it, if that's okay with other council members.
Lance, do you want to respond to that particular comment? I see you.
Is direction okay? Do you need a motion, or can we just wait and come back next meeting with the other information?
No, I think we can do what you're asking. It'll strictly be an estimate, as you know, and it'll be per foot of that material installed, and we still won't know from a traffic engineering standpoint if it's something that they would recommend that we do. So just if everyone's okay with that, then we can bring back the numbers of how much that low wall would cost, and because I know that's the number we're after.
And not just the money, but since they sent this to Michael and said, here's an alternative, you would think that it must be okay, or they wouldn't be suggesting it. Okay, they're not going to, the engineering company's not going to suggest something to us that doesn't work. Okay, they're giving us an alternative. Rather than do the guardrail, here's an alternative. That's what the package saying.
Was that in context, Michael, of a temporary barrier until they get the abrasive coating on? Is that how it would be perceived, or was that just an option?
That was my perception, that these low-profile barriers would simply be temporary until the high-friction surface treatment.
And
Good with that, Steve?
Yes, and again, just to clarify and to recap, we don't know what FDOT's going to do. All of what we're doing is temporary, and it may all go away because FDOT may engineer this thing with guardrails and everything, but between now and then, at least we have something in place.
Isn't FDOT going to do what was in front of us a few months ago?
Yes.
No, we had to abandon that. We voted to abandon it. That's the only way they would take it on. The lab project completely was negated. We don't know.
Yeah, we had to abandon it because we screwed up the decision tool, but basically, how they're going to do it is going to remain the same. We're just not the ones paying for it or calling the shot.
Yeah, we abandoned the LAP grant that was awarded to the city so that the state could assume that LAP grant.
But we anticipate them doing the same high-friction surface.
The project is signage and high-friction surfacing, and how that turns out, they're going to be engineering that, and we'll start after the new year in 2020 doing that.
Thanks, and I know we're getting ready to move on, but
Are we okay with direction as opposed to?
I think I'm good as long, I just wanted to make sure that that was the only price you wanted, is that lower barrier that we're talking about, because it's new to me.
And then just to clarify, because my comment about where the guardrail system, when you look at our motion that we were given, it says perform such work as to provide a design for a guardrail system on the northern section of the curve. That's the motion. So it didn't have anything about a guardrail in the median. So make sure if we are doing one in the median, which I believe we do need to, and then we need a different motion, and that needs to be incorporated.
We'll correct that motion.
Thanks.
And according to Ms. Ramswell too, then we need to look at a short barrier on the south side as well.
Exactly. Yep, I understand. There's two places where we want the barrier as per the original motion.
Correct. Everybody good with that? Shake your head. All right. Right now, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So we're still in the city manager's report under item I.
Good to go?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. Item I is a request for direction from the city council on amendments to the short-term rental ordinance and the invocation of pending ordinance doctrine. We have Mr. Forgione, who chaired the short-term rental committee, is available to answer any questions.
I've got a question. Are you looking for us to legislate tonight, Lance, or give you guys direction on some ideas to amend the existing ordinance?
Yes, I would rather that you just give us some ideas so we can come back and amend the ordinance.
All right, then we'll start right now. Up first will be Kyron and then Mr. Overdeer.
Okay, first off, I talked to Lewis just a minute ago. One of my biggest concerns is the fact that we need to clarify what is a residential for family residential. I wrote it down here because unless you're, please bear with me if you are not my age, you won't remember these shows, but unless you're the Brady Bunch, the Waltons, or the Bradfords from 8 is Enough, I don't see how we can have single-family residence with more than 3 to 4 bedrooms and get away with it. So I'd like to have, before I could see some of this stuff passed, I want to clarify that. The second thing is how much regulation is too much regulation in Crystal Beach and for for this to go in to where we're actually killing the tourism business for short-term rentals. We regulate, and then we regulate short-term rentals, but we're not doing anything in the neighborhoods. That brings up parking, okay? If we're going to regulate parking in the short-term rental areas, then we need to regulate parking everywhere else in town, okay? Somebody has is having a party for football, since we love football season. Yay, Auburn. Sorry. There you go. War Eagle. I didn't want to say that part. I didn't want to hurt Alabama that bad. It was a great game, by the way. Very good. Anyway, the point being, you're having a football game party. You got 9 cars where only 3 can be, and everybody's parked on the street. Okay, are we going to penalize that residential area? But we're doing the same. We're penalizing the short-term rentals because they got 9 cars. Okay. Secondly, we go the registration fee. Somebody mentioned that earlier. We are pricing people out. We get bed tax off of this, which the county gets the bed tax, but we get a portion of that bed tax back every year, for the first responders and everything each year. There's going to be a point where I understand the people who bought houses to live there permanently, but most of the Crystal Beach area and a lot of the Holiday Isle area is not permanent residents. It is basically people who bought houses as second incomes, and that's what they're using them for. So the basic thing is how much regulation is too much regulation before we stifle the tourism business that we have. Where the management companies can only do so much, the owners can only do so much. It goes back to the same thing with Airport Road. You can't fix stupid. If you tell them they can only bring 5 cars and they bring 6 or 7 cars, what are you going to do? You're stuck. I mean, I understand our big SUVs, and I'm surprised at the size of the SUVs. They're getting bigger and bigger instead of smaller. I mean, it's like forget the minivan. They're starting to make the little the Mercedes vans that are more like SUVs now. So the point being, and then I'll shut up because I guess I'm probably rambling. We're over-regulating, I think, in a lot of areas. We're under-regulating in some areas. If we're having a garbage issue problem, we need to work with Waste Management to see if there's ways to change that. Maybe we need to change the city's timing for garbage from Tuesdays and Fridays to another day, to other dates, to make it work better. We've got so many issues that I look at it from this way. The city is responsible. The city is more responsible than some people think they are. We are responsible. We created some of this problem. So this council and the city as a whole should help fix the problem. The committees are great, but the committees, to me, sometimes it's on it's a personal level. And I understand that if you live in that area and you want the peace and quiet that you deserve for having your house there, I understand that. But when you built in Crystal Beach or Holiday Isle, there was a risk. It's like living near the airport. Yeah, I mean, I can understand the situation. But we need to define what is a single-family residence, how many houses, how much is big, how we can regulate. But if we're going to regulate just those areas there, I think we need to regulate everywhere. I mean, it's not fair that we just do the short-term rental areas and not do the rest of the city. I just believe it's not right, and that's all I got to say right now.
Mr. Oberdear.
Okay, I guess when I first looked over this agenda item, I thought what we were going to do was go through these short-term rental task force motions and decide which ones we wanted to have incorporated, I guess, into our ordinances or do something about. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. So I went through the motions, and I had some issues with about three of them. One of them is, and we've been talking about this, is the parking passes. They're told when they rent the unit how many vehicles they can bring, and when they get here, you've got a form in here that they're going to go through, and it's going to tell them all about garbage and noise and trash, but it's also going to tell them about parking and how many vehicles they can have and where they can't park. You can't park on the sidewalks, you can't park in the grass and all that, and what's going to happen to them if they do. So I don't think we need to give them parking passes on top of that. I mean, I don't think that accomplishes anything, and putting a parking pass in your vehicle isn't going to keep you from bringing 6 vehicles if you're really only supposed to have 4. So I wouldn't support that. Extra trash cans, I think, are a good idea if you have a property that is continually has too much trash for the trash cans that you have. And I know it's an issue down in Crystal Beach, and I think I've heard it's even an issue on Holiday Isle that the trash attracts rats, and of course nobody here wants rats. But so we got to fix that problem. But if you've got a property, and one of the property owners was here earlier talking to this issue, if you've got a property and you manage it in such a way that they don't put trash outside the trash can, then I don't think you should be required to get extra trash cans. It's not something that you need to just have just because everybody else has to have one. And you shouldn't be penalized for somebody that's a bad actor. So I don't think that we ought to have them. If they have trash outside their trash can and Joey and company go by and they give them a notice of violation, which I assume that's what you're doing, is you're noticing that that's a violation. If they get a notice of violation, then yeah, they ought to get extra trash cans. But if you don't get any violations, then you don't need extra trash cans. So I wouldn't support just automatically making everybody get extra trash cans. And calling the tenant and telling them to take their trash out the next day, I think is just overkill, and it's probably bothersome. And if you're already doing that and you've got an app or you're emailing them or you're texting them or whatever, and you want to keep doing that, fine, go ahead. But I don't think that everybody has to do that. Number one, I don't even think it's enforceable. How are we going to ever know if they called them or not? And so why tell everybody that they have to do that? Because probably the people that aren't doing it now probably aren't going to do it anyway. So I wouldn't support us calling tenants the day before on Monday and Thursday and tell them, put your trash out on Tuesday and Friday. So that's the only thing I have. The rest of them, I think, look great. And by the way, I want to thank the task force for getting together and giving up 2 hours of your week every week for a number of weeks. And it's nice to see citizens that are concerned about the city of Destin. And you guys have certainly done that. And some of you have done it more than once. You've been on both task forces. So thank you for your efforts. And I think you got some real good motions. I just think those three don't.
Skip, do you want to put those ideas into a motion?
Well, I don't know if I'm ready. I would make a motion that we adopt all the short-term rental task force motions except the 3 that I mentioned, which is parking passes, extra trash cans, and calling tenants to put trash out.
I got a motion. I got a second. And for discussion, we'll start with Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks, Mayor. Okay, so the problem I have when I look through all this is that there's no list of the exact recommendations or motions in order, unless I missed something, but in order to find motions, I'm having to scroll through and look at all the different minutes and try to formulate my own little list of what we're supposed to be voting on. I am seeing a shake of the head.
There should be a list of what the motions and recommendations were in there. For some reason, I don't have the same version.
453 on mine. Try 453.
All right, I'm all the way down on 500, so 453? Uh-uh. Apparently, when we resynced, it changed some of the stuff. Because where I'm headed with this is, I can't tell, I mean, I try to handwrite some of these out, but I know I've missed some. But like Mr. Overdeer said, it would be helpful to see this list so that we could actually talk about each one.
Yeah, that's what it
Okay,
is.
1029, I see, okay.
Page 498.
498 on ours.
I don't know, it's on yours.
Well,
It just says minutes.
okay, so, yeah, it's not 498 on mine.
Motions.
Okay, here, 499. Okay, so it looks like there's a set of 3 from 1029, a set of 3 from 11.5, 1 from 11.12, and then another 4 on 11.22. So, Skip, was your recommendation based on all of these on these pages?
Yes.
So you're in favor of,
Except for the 3 that I mentioned.
okay.
And if anybody else has ones that they don't like or don't want to discuss, well, we can do that as well, but. It just doesn't seem to me that, I mean, that's what the motions were for, was they're the motions that they're recommending to us. That was my understanding of how this whole process worked, but, and maybe that's just me thinking that, and that's not the way the system works, but they made all these motions, they all voted on them, and these are the ones that they passed, and so the ones that they passed, I think they're recommending to us that we adopt them.
So
Yes or
which
no?
trash one were you opposed to? Because there's a few having to do with
The
trash.
one that says, extra trash cans, where it's 1 for every 5.
So that's on 1029, Mr. Bruce Crowell's motion. It's the second one.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you'd like to pull out the second motion on 1029?
Yes.
And what can you, in that fashion, sort of point out the other ones?
The one on the extra trash, oh, that's the extra trash cans. The other one on the parking passes.
Is
For
that
each vehicle.
1112, the motion on 1112?
Yes, the first motion on 1112.
Okay.
And then the call to tenants to put out their trash.
I think that's 1105, the first motion. Mr. Sean Hickey?
Yes, the first motion under 110519. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Let me collect my thoughts while I don't see anyone else. Does someone else want to speak while I collect my thoughts?
I got Mr. Mitchell's up next, Preble, while you go look at it. Go ahead, Steve.
I have a bunch of comments, and I have several questions. First of all, as everybody in the council knows, we got a variety of emails from quite a few citizens giving us their input. I would have liked to know that this was on the agenda, because we weren't told until Wednesday that this was on the agenda. So I couldn't really respond to anybody because I didn't know we had it, number one. Couple of questions. Under goals, I'm on my tablet, it's page 501. But under the goals of the task force, this is item number 6. It says, according to the city manager, what staff hopes to get from the task force are data points that they could measure to determine whether they are doing a good job enforcing the code and tracking the necessary data. Could somebody answer, were those data points identified?
They were at the committee meetings. Mr. Forgione had prepared documents with all of the information on compliance from last summer. And they were reviewed in detail.
So
with
data
the
points, you're talking about the stats and all? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, all right. And second of all, first of all, and I apologize, I want to say thanks to everyone who volunteered for this, just as Skip said, more than one time. You all devoted a lot of time, and thank you for that. As a couple of people spoke about, we need to put more teeth into these things. We have some rules, number one. You hear me say all the time, it's ridiculous to have a new rule that you can't enforce. So my question to staff is this: does staff right now have any plans that you could share that are going to put any teeth into some of our rules? We talked about increasing the prices, but that's all we're doing is talking. What are we going to do? Do you all have any thoughts in mind to move this forward, to put the teeth in it?
One thing that just so I can back up, when I went through the review process with everyone, one thing that I noticed that we as code can do better is I'm taking that information and I'm going to bring it back to you also on how I'm going to reorganize your code enforcement, code compliance with an org chart, and also to add your night shift. I do believe if a minimum of 2 personnel that I can get for a night shift, we can mitigate a lot of these complaints that are in the evening shifts that are rolling over into your daytimes. That'll also roll over into your weekends. So if we can take your Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Mondays, and we got an evening shift, it's going to cut out a lot of these complaints, and it's going to educate people. Also, I noticed a way that we came up with a code citation process. Instead of issuing notice of violations, we're going to issue citations. Those citations are going to be posted at the property. From there, they'll be sent out via email to the responsible party and then certified to the property owner. So the property owner is going to start getting all these violations.
But do we have anything in place right now? Are you thinking about, we talked about some great suggestions about having an elevated fee or fine schedule for the habitual offenders. In other words, do we need to motion that to get you all to do it, or is that something that you all are putting in place?
One of the things that should be in your agenda package under the recommended motion would include allowing us to amend the fee resolution to increase the fees. Let me see if that made it in.
And just so some of y'all know this and don't, originally the agenda packet was 700 and something pages, and then today it was uploaded and it was decreased to 600. So that's why there's some of these confusions about some of the pages. They're just not matching, okay, depending on what you have on.
And it looks like that's not in there, what I just referred to. So we will bring those suggestions to you at the next meeting then, on the 16th.
Okay. And I think...
And Steve, just to add to that, because the recommended motion was to direct you guys to prepare amendments to the ordinances, and I think Skip's motion is similar to that, because you took out 3 of those recommendations for them to prepare amendments to ordinance. So I guess to answer Ms. Ramswell's questions and Mr. Manchel's, do we want to just go ahead and vote on this motion here and then give you direction to provide us all the different options that were recommended? How would y'all like to do that? Because this is a little bit haphazard of sorts. It would be easier if we had a sheet in front of us with all the recommended motions. We break them down, vote on them all, and send them to you so you know what amendments to write up for us to actually decide on.
I think we ought to make a amended motion to postpone this until the next meeting. At that time, staff can prepare all the things you're talking about, bring it back to us for a complete vote, to include what we want to do to put some teeth in this, because people brought up some excellent suggestions. We can't just keep sitting here saying yes, 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 and not do it. So include those features in there about a graduated fee for fines. That's a motion.
Skip?
It's a substitute motion, or we can, whatever you want to.
Okay, we have a substitute motion then.
Basically recap to bring back this information in total next week, next
Yeah,
council
that's
meeting.
fine. If you all don't feel like you have enough information, or you didn't have enough time to review it, or you want additional information related to teeth and fees that were not included here, we can just bring that back at a future meeting, probably on the 16th, and put it in a more succinct fashion, maybe, bullet points.
Personally, when we pass something, I want to have some teeth in it. We keep talking about it, people bring up good suggestions, the short-term rental people tell us that's what we need to do, and we're not doing it. So yes, that's what I want to do. Bring back that stuff with all the changes to include the extra teeth in it.
Yeah, and I think just the sheer volume of the material that we had to go over, especially like what Ms. Ramswell was saying, reading all the minutes, trying to get all the information of how it all played out, where the motions came from, it'd be, you know, I still haven't found on mine where that list is because it's not on the page you said or the one that she has hers on in my, I don't know what version I got. But if we could have it condensed into a easily readable document of all the things that they recommend to where we can say, yes, we like that one, no, we don't, and then add what Mr. Menchel said is look at a citation fee for parking is where that came up, a graduating, where he's not writing warnings or notices of violation, he's writing tickets that have to be paid. I think that's where you're going at, isn't it, Steve? It's instead of just somebody getting a letter, hey, you're violating our ordinance, and then they just throw it in the trash can.
Or again, as everybody spoke, the short-term rental, a $30 ticket. That's just the cost of doing business. They don't care. So that's my motion.
Okay, so we have an amended motion. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
We got a second. I got a couple people up here on the list that would like to weigh in, discussion. First up, Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. So in reviewing these that are here, well, number one, my suggestion would be that when we had them bring forth recommendations on the first go, we were provided a numbered list so that we could literally go through and go, okay, item one, and then discuss item one. It just made it easier and we could all follow it. So that would be terrific. Since I already know based on some of the discussion up here this evening that there is some concern regarding the trash recommendation and the parking recommendation and the phone call recommendation. And I understand the phone call one, but the trash one, I'd like to understand if there's something else the council would like to request the committee present in terms of dealing with the trash, or if we don't want them to deal with the trash, what is sort of our goal in regards to trash and the parking placards? No parking placards, different way of doing the parking placards, just some guidance, some insight so that they can be prepared with more information. We are more armed with information.
I thought the one recommendation made by one of our commenters about a concierge trash pickup by Waste Management just made too much sense.
Well, and I thought we had already approved.
That'd be one good way to go down that route. That sounded really good. Skip, you wanted to weigh in on that too?
No, my only comment was going to be that I think that if you don't violate our ordinances for trash, in other words, your trash cans are out there and all the trash is in the trash can, then you shouldn't be required to get more trash cans. That was my only point. That you don't just automatically say, you automatically, because of the number of occupants you have in your house, you automatically have to have this number of trash cans. You determine how many trash cans you need, and if it turns out that we find out that you didn't determine the right amount, then you will be told how many you're going to have. And that's why I didn't understand if there was, and I talked to Ms. Kopp about this, there is a way to do that where we don't have to make everybody get, X number of trash cans per 6 people. We can just say the people that put too much trash, that generate too much trash for whatever reason, and they leave the trash outside the trash receptacle. Those are the people that we can tell, okay, you have to get more trash cans.
So, and one of the motions that I actually noticed that was in here, a recommended motion that didn't make it to our list, was increasing the parking violation fine to the state maximum standard. And I don't see that listed here in the ones that supposedly were culled from the minutes. So if we could do that, according to the state statute 316.1967, it looks like it's $100, but however we can look at that.
It's in there. It's It's under the 102919 motions, it's the third one. Mr. Ken Wampler moved that recommend to the city council.
Oh, you're right.
that the
Okay, I
ordinance-
didn't see it. Okay, you're right. So, again, I'd really like to thank the short-term rental committee. I know we have several members that are here. Thank you guys so much. It was very disappointing to read some of the emails and the comments that we got. And of course, not everybody knows what happens in the meetings, and sometimes you just go by what you read or see somewhere else. But you know, there were comments like the board's gone rogue and they don't know what they're doing and they're exemplifying antipathy and all of these, you know, comments that I feel are really disparaging to the people that wanted to volunteer their time. They're not up there saying, this is what it's going to be, you're going to enact that, and that's it. They're put together and they represent a variety of, you know, all sorts of professions. They're rental managers, they're rental owners, they're residents. It's a broad scope of residents that are represented on this committee, and it was done that way on purpose. But even more importantly, they're volunteering their time, they're discussing things in an open public meeting, and then they're just bringing forth recommendations to us. So nothing is set in stone. They're just discussing all sorts of things having to do and impact with short-term rentals. So I want to thank them, and I apologize for some of the negativity that they're receiving just for doing a duty and volunteering to serve this community. So thank you all for serving on this committee, those of you that I can see right now that are part of that. But yeah, I look forward to getting a more structured list where we're not searching and missing things. So some sort of numbered list that's gone back through the minutes and literally lists each of the motions from each of those meetings. That'd be terrific.
Rodney, you were going to say something?
Yeah, can we listen to Ms. Bell, please? Or she has a comment.
Sure.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court, member of that committee. The best thing I can tell you guys is that we sat in that room, you were with us every day. Weren't you at every meeting? Okay, so at the first meeting, we were told what the issues were over the past summer. We were given graphs and such to see what the problems were and what we should address. We didn't know what we should address. I mean, some people had ideas because they live near them or whatever, but that's what we were tasked with. We chose as a committee to address the situations that were there. And by that we said, okay, if trash is a problem and it's continued to be a problem, what can we do as a committee to make suggestions to the council to fix it? Because it's not being fixed. Parking, same exact thing. Parking is still an issue. We weren't there to slam the hammer down, or we were just, as a committee, saying we still have these issues. They've been continuing. This is what the numbers that Mr. Forgione reported to us. That's all we were doing. There's people out there writing nasty things about me. I don't care. I didn't do anything wrong. I sat down and I spoke with the people that were there. There were people in the audience that we listened to. Everybody had their chance to have their input in. The people who are writing about me weren't there. Thank you.
That's all right. You don't have to defend yourself because we get to be the lucky ones that make the decision. So I appreciate your recommendations, and everybody needs to understand that these citizen panels only recommend to the council what they think the council should do, but the council's not be held to those recommendations. And I think this council's shown that over time, that we think it through, we take some recommendations, and some recommendations we don't take at all. And that's probably what's going to take place on these motions that were passed by the STR when we get to our next meeting. Some of the stuff we will probably enact upon, I'm pretty sure some of them we won't. Rodney?
Joey, do you have anything in place that addresses the trash that's sitting on the curb that's not in a can?
Yes, sir. What we do is we're going to issue a citation, post it on the door, just like I was saying, and then we'd send a courtesy copy to management, and copy goes to the certified to your property owner. That'll be your first warning, and then it goes to their monetary, and then a monetary. Again, if it happens again, monetary again with the max amount. If it happens again, they'll be given a court date, and they'll go before the magistrate.
What is the max fine?
It'll go up to $300. 100, 150, and then 300.
Okay.
That's substantial.
Yeah, so I know we can't just single out a handful of people and make them have 2 or 3 or 4 trash cans. So I just want to make sure we had something in place for you and your people to address trash sitting out on the side.
Yes, sir. This is that process that I come up with after studying this season. I think this, along with some manpower in the evening, is really going to put a dent in some things, especially if we're going to make the property owners start to be responsible.
All right,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
So we had a motion, then we had an amended motion, and seeing no further discussion, let's go ahead and vote on it. Ayes have it, so moved. We'll address this issue and come up with a final approved amendments to the ordinance at our next meeting. Go ahead, Lance, announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few announcements. This Thursday at 6 p.m. at the Destin Community Center, the city's annual tree lighting ceremony will be held with a visit from Santa Claus, I understand. Today, the annual financial audit started at City Hall. On December the 9th, a week from today, we have a special council meeting at 6 p.m. The library is currently hosting Food for Fines, so if you have a fine on one of your overdue books, you can bring in a canned good and they will waive the fine in lieu of the canned good, which will be donated to someone who needs it. We also have our holiday decorating contest going on. I believe it started on the 1st, and so I encourage all the businesses and residential areas to please decorate, especially if we can decorate the Highway 98 Harbor Boulevard corridor. That would be fantastic. I'm starting to see some go up around the neighborhoods. We will have volunteer judges going around scoring these, and if you want to be a judge, we can put you to work. Just let me know. The engineering staff, which consists of the city engineer, the engineering assistant, and the stormwater manager, have officially relocated to this building as of today and are reporting to their new supervisor. Lastly for me is I also wanted to take just a second to thank the short-term rental task force for volunteering their time to assist the city in improving the processes that we're trying to get better and better each year. They don't make a lot of money doing this, and I really appreciate them taking time out of their day to help us do this. So thanks. That's all I have, sir.
All right. It's your turn, Kyle.
All right. First ordinance is the second reading of Ordinance 1931 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2, zoning maps, to include a change in the zoning designations of the parcels described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A, from residential, office, institutional, tourist development, ROITD, to commercial general, CG, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, public hearing. If I could get Lewis and Ken, I guess, if you're going to be testifying at the stand, I'll swear you guys in. Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth? Over to Ms. Kopp.
We will just enter the entire staff report and agenda item and ordinance into the record. We don't have any new information unless council has questions, so we won't add anything from what we already told you last meeting at this time. You do have to open for a public hearing.
I do. And before we get into a motion and have discussion on this, I'll open up the public hearing portion of this meeting. Second reading of ordinance 19-31-LC. Is there anyone in the gallery here that would like to talk? Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Council. My name is Carl Seekamp. I live at 4589 Woodwind Drive in Destin. My property does border this property that's being considered in ordinance number 19-31LC. Right up front, I'll tell you I am opposed to the change of the zoning. The proposed rezoning would change the neighboring property from ROITD to a much less restrictive commercial general designation. The property being considered for commercial general zoning is bordered on the residential neighborhoods of Sovereign Isle and Emerald Breeze. Both of these neighborhoods are beautiful, peaceful residential neighborhoods that will significantly be degraded if the city permits commercial general development immediately adjacent to them. I'm aware that the city has recently made admirable progress towards amending the commercial general zoning in Destin to provide conditional provisions to many of the potential CG uses of the properties, as well as a 30-foot buffer requirement. Having said that, however, these protections are simply not enough to prevent significant degradation of the existing residential neighborhoods of Sovereign Isle and Emerald Breeze should the city approve the proposed commercial general rezoning. I'd like to point out that the 30-foot buffer that is offered is approximately the width of this city council chambers and is simply insufficient space to provide a graceful transition from commercial general to single-family residential. While many of the less compatible commercial general uses are subject to conditional approval of the city council, there's no guarantee that future councils will rule in favor of the residents when considering such proposals. The current zoning of ROITD does, however, restrict what can be built on this property and prevents many of the less compatible uses from even being considered. This rezoning is being proposed in order to synchronize the future land use map of Destin's comprehensive plan with the city's zoning map. However, the only reason that the two maps currently disagree is because the future land use map was changed in 2016 without the input of the neighboring resident stakeholders. The future land use map change should therefore hold no precedence, as it was not properly coordinated with the stakeholders of the surrounding properties. I'd also like to remind us of the stated purpose of the future land use map in the first paragraph, where it says is to, quote, enhance the quality of life for current and future residents and encourage stable or improving neighborhoods and centers. The Destin Comprehensive Plan in multiple locations calls for, quote, protecting and preserving the quality of Destin's residential areas and requires transitions in land use. The proposed CG zoning is in direct opposition to these goals, as the property directly borders multiple residential neighborhoods entirely void of any transition space. In fact, 100% of the properties abutting this particular land that's under consideration for CG are single-family residences. The city planners have previously spoken about the use of transitions in city planning. The comprehensive plan also requires transitions in land use. The 30-foot buffer alone is insufficient to constitute a transition from the far extremes of single-family residential to commercial general. Finally, the comprehensive plan future land use element is clear and directive in how to handle this very situation. Reference 1-3.6.4, identification of land use and zoning inconsistencies, and with regard to undeveloped land, states, and I quote, undeveloped lands located in a zoning district that are inconsistent with the approved future land use designation for property shall be rezoned to the least intensive district appropriate to that land use designation. Shall and least intensive are key words there, not should or may. There are insufficient protections in place for this property to be zoned CG and protect the residential neighbors as called for in the city's comprehensive plan. The property was originally designated ROI for a reason. The CG removes the transition that currently exists. There is no compelling need for CG in this area, and it opposes the residential protection goals that the comprehensive plan provides. The neighbors did not have input in the 2016 future land use change and led us to this evening's decision. Further, 153 neighbors signed a petition opposing CG here, and the comprehensive plan directs us that where this conflict exists, the undeveloped lands shall be zoned to the least intensive use. The ROI zoning, in my opinion, should not be changed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to weigh in on this particular?
Trey,
project?
did you have anything?
Good evening. Trey Goodwin, 98 Oak Hill Avenue, Fort Walton Beach, Florida. Mr. Mayor, council members, from the applicant's perspective, nothing has changed from the first reading of the ordinance. We are here. We're prepared to answer any questions that council may have. I have with me again Ken Metcalf, who is an expert planner. But unless there's questions, I would just ask that the members consider the evidence that's been presented in the agenda packet. And from the applicant's perspective, we believe that the changes that you and your staff have put into the commercial zoning regulations actually present very powerful tools available to this council to protect the neighborhoods. Mr. Seecamp's concerns for his property are valid, and I think that the council has reacted and put those tools in place so that you, as the representatives of those neighbors, will be able to protect them. And so we would ask for your vote of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other further comments? No questions? No, you've already, sorry about that. At this particular point, seeing no further discussions, let's go ahead and bring this to a vote. Oh, first, I got to have a motion. Somebody want to read that, please? Skip?
I can read that. I move to adopt ordinance 19-31 LC be adopted on second reading.
I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. I did want to acknowledge Mr. Seecamp. Are you aware that a lot of your homeowners association met with our land use attorney and discussed some elements that could be done to...
I was one of them at that. I met with the land use attorney and discussed that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you were aware because I know we did change some of the, or not change, but some of the uses that were incorporated in that particular zoning. You explained.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and as a result of those meetings, the other residents that participated were satisfied. So I believe that's why they're not opposing it any longer, based on what they've said to me. But what we did is we, staff worked with me and worked through some issues with the residents to look at the more what you would consider offensive to a residential area type uses, or those uses that are less compatible with residential. And we made them conditional uses with a very detailed process and criteria for council to consider when one of those uses, if and when one of those uses is proposed. Additionally, just to clarify, the buffer is not just the 30 feet, it's 30 feet in addition to the setbacks. And council can also increase that buffer further when a conditional use application comes as well. So there's a lot of room to address compatibility issues with the surrounding neighborhood in the new commercial district that you all just revised recently.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Marlin.
Mr. Mayor, I will be abstaining from voting on this issue due to the fact that the owner of the property is a partner in the company I work for.
So noted. Seeing no further discussion, let's go ahead and take this to a vote. Ayes have it. So moved.
Okay, we have item 5B, the first reading of ordinance number 1934 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, section 7.12.01A2, zoning maps to include a change in the zoning designations of the parcels described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from residential office institutional tourist development, RITD, to commercial general, CG, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing as well.
And at this point, I will open the public hearing portion of this reading of ordinance 1934 LC. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment on this proposed ordinance? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period, and I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1934 LC on first reading and direct staff to advertise for second reading.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Any further comment? Seeing nobody up on the list, let's go ahead and take this to a vote. The vote's unanimous, so moved. Go ahead, Mr. Bowman.
We have item 5C, which is the first reading of ordinance number 1935 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2, zoning maps to include a change in the zoning designation of the parcel described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from Bay Estates BE to Recreation REC, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing.
Thanks, sir. So at this portion of the meeting, I'll open up public comments on the first reading of ordinance 1935 LC. Does anybody in the audience have anything to weigh in on? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1935 LC on first reading and direct staff to advertise for second reading.
Got a motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none? Vote is unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bowman.
We have item 5D next, the first reading of ordinance number 1936 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending Article 2 of the Land Development Code, providing for procedures for lot splits, providing for findings of fact, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you, sir. At this portion of the meeting, I'll open up public comment. Seeing nobody jumping up, come to the podium, I'll close the public hearing portion of this meeting and entertain a motion. Not all at once.
Okay, I can make that motion. I move to approve ordinance 19-36 LC on first reading, direct staff to advertise for second reading, and authorize the city manager to amend the fee resolution to include a fee in the amount of $200 for lot split applications made pursuant to this ordinance 19-36 LC.
Thank you, sir. And I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any further comment? Seeing none? Wait a second, I do. Ms. Ramswell.
I just have a question for our land use attorney, or Lewis, I'm not sure, whomever, but when we receive an application of this type, isn't it typically to, instead of have one house on one lot, make it into two, so then suddenly you have two houses on two lots?
Yes.
Now, doesn't 500 seem a little low, knowing that the idea is to actually create an entirely new lot with a new home? Or is that standard for an application fee of that nature?
For a single lot split, that's a fair amount. Currently, it charges $1,500, which is equivalent to doing more than one lot. So we think not only is it unfair, but it's also burdensome because you go through the exact same processes as if you're doing 5, 10, 15 lots. And so this is a streamlined process where we measuring the magnitude of the work that's involved in splitting one lot and make it appropriate and fair.
Okay, thank you.
And you did mention the $500 fee. I think that's what should be in there, not the $200. I think the motion said $200.
Recommended motion said 200, the staff report says 500. The correct amount should be 500. So your motion was 200, we're asking it to be 500, yeah.
So I'll amend my motion to make it 500.
Thank you.
So the motion's been amended to 500. The second, is that okay, with you. Mr. Braden, you second that initial motion? I have a okay for the amended motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Vote unanimous, so move. Mr. Bowman.
Next up is 5E, the first reading of ordinance number 1937 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending Article 7 of the Land Development Code to revise the residential office and institutional village residential zoning district. Providing for findings of fact, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
At this portion of the meeting, I'll open this up for comment from the public. Nobody wants to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment portion of it, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion, Mayor. I move to approve ordinance 1937 LC on first reading and direct staff to advertise for second reading.
I have a motion.
Second.
Got a second. Seeing no further discussion. Vote unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bowman.
Last, we have 5F, the first reading of ordinance 1938 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to the use of wheeled vehicles on public and private areas of the beach. Providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for an amendment to Land Development Code Section 11.08.02, and amending subsection CV. Providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Once again, provide anyone that would like to speak for the public. Open the public hearing portion of this meeting. Marcy, you going to come up and speak?
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. Quite honestly, I don't even know what it was about, so I was hoping somebody could explain it before I was able to have a question.
This is a correction of the ordinance that was previously passed. We as staff inadvertently did not take into account the motion, the full motion that was made by council that included this condition of additional vehicles up to a maximum of 3. Right.
I understand.
And so we're making that correction with this ordinance. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make it. I'll move that the City Council approve ordinance 19-38-LC on first reading.
Second.
And direct staff to advertise ordinance 19-38-LC for second reading.
Second again.
I got a motion in 2 seconds, so I'm sure we have no further discussion. Vote unanimous, so moved. Lance.
We have 3 items on the consent agenda, and staff is available to answer any questions, should you have any.
If I'll entertain a motion at this point.
I had one question. On the first agenda packet that we had on Wednesday was page 72. On tonight's agenda packet, I have it as page 119. And I'm going to try to get back to it. It was minutes from the Public Works, Public Safety Committee, and it was the October 8th minutes. Hang on. Takes a while to get back.
If you could hit the bottom.
I don't have the same kind as you. Under, trying to find it. Okay. It talked about the different committee members were speaking at different things on Public Works. This is either page 119 or 120, I'm not sure. And it lists Vice Chairman Schmidt, and he said, asked about the following, and there's nothing there. I just ask you to go back and look at that. There's no information there under what he was talking about. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Braden?
Yeah, we can either get explanation now or just pull C for explanation.
Second that if there's a need for a second.
It's pulled, so if council would like to vote on A and B, we can go ahead and vote on A and B, and then we'll have the discussion on C.
Motion to, oh, did you have a question?
No, I was going
No,
to make a
I'll
motion.
entertain a motion right now. Throw one out there.
Motion to approve consent items A and B.
Have a motion? A second? Let's take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. We have a question on C. Webb? What's the question? What's,
Just wanted an update on the software.
oh, you just want to hear it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The software, Intergov, we have had 2 meetings with their representatives who have come down. Believe the next meeting is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Louis, but I think it's the 11th, 12th, and 13th, which will be a Tuesday through Thursday. We have been digging into everybody's processes within their respective departments and adapting that over into this for the software. And so far, so good. We really appreciate all the staff's involvement, and the directors have been working hard to ensure that their staff is prepared. And so far, we are, I would definitely say, on schedule, if not ahead of schedule, with our consultants.
Are we finished with all the scanning?
We have transferred, and Louis, I think the next truckload was coming over this week. Is that correct? So we are still continuing to move documents over there, and they are being scanned with the VRC services. That continues to be in process.
And what are they doing with all the documents after they're scanned and we actually don't need to refer back to them anymore?
So it will go into storage until we designate otherwise what we want to do with those documents.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve consent item C.
Got a motion second. No discussion. Let's vote. Vote is unanimous. Mr. Braden.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ramswell.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, sir. Okay, let me start. Got a list. Mayor, you may be able to add something to this. I realize Mr. Destin's not here tonight, but several of us, the mayor, Skip, and myself, attended the public meeting with the negotiations with Gulf Power. And I know Mr. Destin was going to bring up the need, and I'm not doing that officially. I just wanted to put everybody about us having a point of contact to start looking in that. I know Mr. Destin was he mentioned that in that meeting, that's why I know it. I don't know if you wanted to opine on that or not, but I know that's something that we need to address moving forward. I don't know, Council, if you want to bring that up or not. But
Yeah, I've got an agenda item that will allow us to hire a project manager.
okay, I just didn't know if that was being covered, so I wanted to talk about that. Okay. Okay, good. Couple of things. I have a question for Mr. Farmer. This is just a general question, and let me try. When we have a contract, okay, let's just make it easy. Let's say a contract for ABC Company, it's for $12,000. What is our typical protocol? Do we pay that $12,000 up front? Is it based on the terms of contract, how it's negotiated? What is our typical norm on the payments of a contract?
Well, it would be based on the terms of the contract, but
right.
I can't think of any case where we would ever pay the $12,000 up front. Typically, they will perform the service, present us with an invoice that is, and we would have a purchase order put into the system to identify that payment being owed to that contractor. But they would submit one or multiple invoices that would be reviewed by the department that is contracted with the work, and then they would sign off as the work being done, and then the invoice would be presented to be paid on the purchase order.
Okay, thank you. Okay, on the agenda tonight, I know we postponed it, But I was kind of curious why, for this entire year, all I've heard is the word crosstown connector. And now all of a sudden, that's a nasty word, and we're only using the word two-lane. It's still a connector, so I'm kind of questioning why we're saying two-lane and not crosstown connector.
I say crosstown connector every time.
Okay, well, but that's not what was on the agenda. Okay, so I'm just saying, I don't know, I think we ought to continue calling it, because it is a crosstown connector. So just a comment. Another comment, if you would, Ray did this already, but if you would continue sending us the stuff in the calendar, in Outlook, that's extremely helpful when we have those special meetings and all when it's there. I know we had talked about it, but if you'd continue doing that would be a big help. As I mentioned earlier, in the bid committee meeting on November 12th, the finance director identified in the contract with the generator maintenance that incorrectly listed on the contract was the sheriff's office generator. So I went back and I looked at the last contract we had on the generator maintenance, and it appears we were charged, at least we're billed on the contract for that same service. So I know you're not in a position to possibly tonight, but my question is it possible on the old contract, because they're showing charges on that, could we have been possibly billed on that in error?
I believe it's been on the contract for a number of years, but the generator has not been functioning, so we would not have been billed for the service on that if the generator was not functioning and we weren't trying to repair it, because I believe that generator is beyond repair.
I understand. I just want to go back, if you could, and just make sure we possibly didn't...
I'll make sure that we haven't paid anybody for maintenance on that unit.
Okay. And then the other question I have on the... bear with me 1 second. There was a portion in a new contract regarding the generator, and it talks about annual services and whatnot, and it talks about physically running it for 30 minutes a week. Is that an automatic function, or is that somebody? It's typically on generators it is, but the way it's written, it looks like somebody's personally going to be there to turn it on in the contract.
Yeah, those are operated automatically on a kind of a timer, and we do get reports through email about when it initiates and when it runs and when it shuts down.
Right. It's just the way it's written, it says somebody's going to turn this on.
Now, that may be the legacy way of doing it, but the way it's done now is remotely.
Well, we got a new contract, and it'd be good to have the right verbiage. It also says that the generator is going to be put back in standby, and it would be in standby automatically. So it makes it look like somebody's physically going to be there to start the generator and put it back in standby. Okay? Okay. And last, I think, if either one of our lawyers could give any kind of update on the audit.
We plan on meeting with Lance sometime in this coming week. Also, we'll be writing a letter to the city, kind of defining our scope of inquiry. So that is the update for now.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Mr. Oberdehr.
Yes, I'd like to appoint Mr. Frank McDonough to the Town Center CRA Advisory Committee.
We have a second?
Second.
Got a second? You're automatically in when you get nominated. We're voting. Yes. Yeah, let's finish up this. Come on, Karen, there we go. Vote unanimous, you're it.
I apologize, I had one other thing that...
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Oberdehr reminded me when he did that. The city put this out, there are several committee positions that are open, okay? And one is on Public Works, Public Safety, that I get the honor of appointing somebody. I'll put this out on my social media, but if anybody's interested in serving on Public Works, Public Safety, please contact me. That's an open position.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things, and Mr. Mitchell brought that up. I have an opening on Board of Adjustment, so if anybody's interested in that one, I need to volunteer for that one also. Just a couple of things. Lance already touched on the tree lighting. Yours truly here will be the MC for that. Please come and join us for that. Friday night is Matty Kelly's Sound of the Seasons. That'll be at 7 o'clock at Village Baptist Church. That's combined choirs of the churches of Destin, and this is for charity. You bring a toy, that's your only fee to get in. Also, on the 15th, thanks to the mayor volunteering me, I will be emceeing the Destin Fishing Museum's boat parade, and the grandstand will be at Margaritaville. And the last item I have is for council's consideration is if the council will approve the mayor and the city manager to write a letter to the county commission and see if we can't get something done about the intersection at Commons and Henderson Beach Road. We have no street light, we have no stoplight. I can't tell you how many accidents I have seen, just near accidents I've seen in just the last few weeks. And like Mr. Mitchell says, the county seems to be kicking the can. I keep hearing there's a bond out from the property owners. Well, I'm tired of listening to that. There is a dangerous situation there. We need to fix it. And I mean, we need the county to come to step up and fix it. I mean, it's dark. There's nothing, there's no street lights, there's no stoplight, there's nothing there, not even a four-way stop. But there's got to be something done there. So if the council, I can entertain a motion if that's what needs to be, but...
Can he just do that as a direction?
I'll just, if I can just give you just a little short input. I was at the county commission meeting last week and talked to them afterwards, and they've actually ordered the mast arms and everything for the stoplight, and that project is in process, and they anticipate it's going to be finished before spring break next year.
Okay, what about a street light like now? All right, that's okay. Well, I'll skip the stoplight part if we can get something done about getting a couple of street lights out there.
I'll work on crafting a letter with the mayor.
Yeah, I think just to kind of as a friendly reminder, we can produce a letter just to kind of keep in the forefront. Of course, any of our council members are more than welcome to
been there, done that.
Call Kelly Wines. He's our
commissioner. Been there, done that. Got the T-shirt on that one.
All right, so we will send a letter.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Let's see, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, so about the dam at Lake Coleman, I don't know if I need a motion for this or not, but I would just have Mr. Burgess do some research on it and have bring us back plans or an update and a price to get it done, and somewhat expeditiously before it gets hot again, and then the algae blooms and thanks. Do I need a motion?
Ms. Kopp.
I don't have anything tonight, thanks.
I know you do.
I've got 3 items. They'll be quick, though. First, I just need to announce the special executive session of the City Council in the case of Point Mezzanine LLC versus City of Destin, case number 2019 CA 003733F in Okaloosa County Circuit Court will be held on Monday, December 9th, 2019 at 5:30 in the City Hall Annex Council Chambers. And then following that, we have the special meeting. So 5:30 for that. The second item is as I alluded to earlier, more of an update at this point. The Gulf Power meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago became apparent pretty quickly that the undergrounding project in particular is going to be a massive undertaking, and the city will need to either employ a project manager as an employee, or they will need to hire an outside consultant pretty much just for this undergrounding effort. Staff is currently exploring options to bring back to council and present them at a future council meeting. This is an unbudgeted item, so it would also require a budget amendment. So hopefully we'll have that back by next meeting, Lance, you think, or January? Yeah. Sometime next meeting or January. Last, I have Lance's contract addendum. This is at the direction of council to buy out some of Lance's vacation leave that he would not be able to carry over. It is attached to the agenda, and I can answer questions on any 3 of these items if you need.
Do you need a motion on this one?
On the contract addendum, I will need a motion, and the motion should just be something to the effect
approve
of...
it.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract addendum for the city manager.
I got a motion, I got a second. Any further discussion? Seeing how we're the ones that directed it, we'll take a vote. Vote unanimous, so moved. And then on the research project manager, you guys will just come back, Lance, with some recommendations for us to consider in-house, outsource, what have you, and a price tag to go along with it?
Yep, we'll come up with some options and a range.
Okay, before everybody gets all their stuff packed up, we do want to offer anyone in the audience an opportunity to speak. Last time, Marcy's standing up in line, so we'll let her go first. No, not really.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. I'm not offended by that at all.
You know, I know why.
Trust me, I enjoyed my time not sitting here.
I know why. I knew that you had a lot more important things to do than come here.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I took care of my dying dog. Anyways, I'm here to talk about Gulf Power mailings that I'm receiving. I don't know if anybody else has received these. They come with a return address of Gulf Power on both of them. But they are actually coming from HomeServe USA Repair Management Corporation. And they are wanting to take, however you would like to pay it, at least $3.99 per month out of your checking account. So I wanted to let the citizens of Destin know that if they receive this, this is not official Gulf Power mail. And I will be happy to post it on my blog for anybody who wants to see what I'm talking about.
That's bad when spam comes through the mail and not your email. Gosh. Well, that's their job. All right. Sir, come on up.
Carl C. Camp, 4589 Woodwind Drive. Obviously disappointed with the decision that was made tonight, but moving onward. But I will say 2 of the 4 people that met that with the city attorney did disagree with that zoning, and both of us are here tonight. But so the lack of the others, I wouldn't say is consent with what was going on. But moving on, I would like to say that part of what got us in this mess in the first place is, once again, the inconsistent zoning and the map that doesn't really match what exists there. And that problem still exists, and it's going to come up again because our neighborhood and Emerald Breeze are both listed as ROI, which is a mixed-use designation. That's not what's there. That's not what's there at all. It's entirely 100% single-family residential. And because that was labeled as ROI and under a mixed-use designation from the very get-go, and I'm predicting, since none of us were around in 2016 or participated in that decision to change that map, but I guarantee that that came with planners that said, hey, those properties are mixed use, it would be appropriate to put commercial general next to them. And I know that's what happened earlier this year, because I saw the planners for both the city and for the property owner of that commercial property make that very same case, that our residential property is mixed use, and therefore it is an appropriate buffer and a transition place for commercial general to exist next to us. So now that it is conditional commercial general after this evening, the next thing that's going to happen is someone will buy that property and they'll want to develop on it. And per those conditional uses that have been authorized, the next step that person will have to come before you all in this council and get approval if they want to build the McDonald's there or the service station behind my house. And I'm relying on you as my representatives. I don't have the deep pockets and the attorneys that come and sit in these meetings like my counterpart did to try to influence you coerce you with lawsuits and things like that. I just appeal to you as my representatives, and I think the best way to do that is, once again, going back and correcting the map that is inconsistent right now, that shows our 2 neighborhoods as some sort of a mixed-use area where there is nothing but residential single-family housing. We're trying to fix that map. We're trying to get rid of all these ROI, the litter of different ROIs that exist across Destin right now. This is the perfect opportunity to do that. Look at what's there. Change it to what it is. It's residential. Then when it comes back up to you in the future, when they propose to build the McDonald's in my backyard, there will not be that ambiguous situation of claiming that it's mixed use and that it's not a residential property. I know I missed the first reading of this because my job calls me to be all over the world, and I wasn't here for that, and it's going to happen again, and I'm not going to be always able to be here for these meetings. And the same thing with several of my neighbors, and that's why several of those neighbors aren't here tonight, is because they're also folks that have jobs that, you know, their duty requires them to not be home all the time. So I appeal to you, please, let's fix the map. Let's put what's there, what's really there, and let's make it residential. It's what it is.
Thank you, sir. With that, any other?
Wait, just for the record, because now my credibility, I told the council that the other two members that we met with agreed with it. That was Rhonda Dossie, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, and Todd Burr. Those were the only other two that I'm referring to that aren't here tonight that I'm aware of that told me specifically that they were good with the changes. Gave you the two names that I spoke with.
Meeting adjourned.